Yo guys, welcome back to Enter Recapping. Today's video is the story you guys voted for in the previous poll. And just a reminder for the OG subscribers, after every poll video drops, a new poll goes up on the channel. Please go vote and help me choose the next project. Anyway, today's story is about a man with a divination system. The system gives him all kinds of missions, from helping children to slapping some hard reality into shady businessmen. The story is fun, but it also gets a bit dark. As always on this channel, we deliver complete endings. So if you're curious how it all turns out, stick around till the end. Alright, without further ado, let's start the recap. The first thing I did on my new job as a roadside fortune teller was look into a young girl's eyes and tell her that her future was doomed. Even though my setup was simple, just a small spot right in front of the marriage registration office. But I knew my fortune reading was gonna be spot on. A young girl walked up to me, her face glowing with happiness. She asked for a reading to see if her marriage to her fiancé would actually work out. I looked at her, deep in my eyes. A faint blue glow sparked to life. My special supernatural powers activated, scanning her facial features in a split second. "The marriage palace on your face looks dark," I told her calmly. "This marriage might not be as happy as it seems on the surface." Her friend, standing right next to her, instantly got angry.
Hey, why are you talking like that?
Her friend snapped, blaming me.
It's a happy day. Can't you just say something nice?
I didn't blink. I just looked at them and calmly asked, "Would you rather hear beautiful lies?" The girl swallowed hard. She asked me to explain why her marriage wouldn't be happy. "Look at the tip of your nose," I pointed out. "It is dark and dull. Your wealth palace is covered in dust, which is a very bad omen. To put it simply, the person you are marrying is struggling with failing finances." Right at that moment, her fiancé walked up. I glanced at him. "He looks tough on the outside," I said, "but he is drowning in debt." The fiancé's face turned red with fury. He stepped forward and called me rude.
"We are supposed to be your customers. Stop spreading superstitions and cursing us."
But I didn't stop. I kept analyzing his face. "I see a black aura covering the exact area between your eyebrows," I told him. "This is a clear sign of an imminent legal problem. It could range from a simple lawsuit to a serious prison sentence." The fiancé froze. I pushed further. "You recently had a big business deal, didn't you? Well, that deal is going to be a total disaster. You will lose absolutely everything." His angry mask shattered into pure worry. He stepped up to me and confessed. He told me he knew exactly who had scammed him on that deal. In a quiet voice, he confirmed that the signs on his face were true. Prison was his inevitable fate. The girl gasped in absolute shock. She turned to her fiancé.
"Is what he just said true?"
He nervously tried to convince her to ignore it.
"It's just nonsense."
He lied. But she didn't listen. She insisted on seeing what was inside his bag. She reached out and grabbed it right out of his hands. She ripped it open, and her eyes went wide. She pulled out a debt certificate for exactly $5 million. She let out a piercing scream of absolute shock. Her fiancé panicked. He tried to justify the situation, begging her to let him explain, but her friend quickly stepped in and pushed him hard, keeping him away from her. Within seconds, the police arrived and took control of the messy situation, while the girl stood there, completely devastated.
Ding.
A system notification rang in my head.
Mission 1 of 3 complete.
I smirked. Well, doing a fortune-telling job was easy as heck, especially because the system helped. I just wanted to know what I would get after completing all 3 of my first mission. To understand why I was doing this, we have to go back exactly 3 days. I was sitting in a cold white hospital room. The doctor was looking at me with pity. He explained my medical condition, and his words felt like a death sentence.
"You have at most 3 months left to live,"
he told me. Deep shock and grief crashed into me. My medical report appeared on the desk, diagnosing me with a terminal brain tumor. It confirmed my remaining time. I broke down. I couldn't stop myself from crying after hearing the shocking news. But then, a mysterious notification popped up in thin air.
A mission to reset your life has begun.
The message told me that a fortune-telling system had bonded with me to save my life. The rules were strict. The system set the mission location at the entrance of the marriage registration office. The time was set daily, between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. The goal? Successfully and accurately read the fortunes of 3 customers. Now, back in the present, a huge man approached my little setup. He was my second customer. He pulled out a large amount of cash and dropped it right in front of me. He asked for my services, respectfully requesting that I read his fortune regarding his marriage. I looked at him and activated my blue eyes. "Your facial features look a bit strange," I told him. The huge man blinked in surprise.
"Why are they strange?"
"The children's palace on your face is full and bright," I explained. "That is a good sign. It means you will be blessed with righteous and obedient children." The man smiled widely, deeply impressed by my accuracy.
"You are a genius,"
he called out proudly. He told me that his son had just gifted him a brand new car last month. He confirmed his son was very devoted to him.
"Let me show you a picture,"
he offered, bragging about his son's good looks while holding out the photo on his phone. I looked at the picture. I thought to myself, this is like good land planted with someone else's crop. So I looked him dead in the eye. "Both you and your wife have square faces and wide jaws. How did you have a son with sharp, delicate features that look absolutely nothing like either of you?" The man froze. He remembered how his neighbors used to joke with him when he was younger. They used to say his wife was beautiful, but his son didn't look like her at all. They jokingly added that the son only inherited the best traits. I didn't let him look away. "Your son's facial details, like the brow bones and jaw shape, do not match your or your wife's features in any way," I confirmed. This radical difference in features is unnatural. The horrifying truth finally hit him. Absolute shock painted his face. He remembered his son's young features. He realized they never looked like him. Then he remembered him as a small child, which was also completely different. His legs gave out. He collapsed straight to the ground.
"He really doesn't look like me,"
the man admitted, his voice cracking. He burst into bitter tears right there on the sidewalk, destroyed by the shocking truth.
Ding. Second mission was successful.
Right after him, a young woman and an old man approached me. They announced it was their turn. The woman asked me to read her and her husband's fortune. She wanted to know if their marriage would bring them good luck, but she quickly clarified,
I only want to hear some words that bring good fortune.
I didn't smile. I stared right at her. "You have prominent cheekbones and thin lips. You have harsh features and sanpaku eyes, which indicate evil. People with these eyes aren't kind-hearted." She gasped, but I kept talking. "You aren't really asking about marriage straight up, are you?" I accused her. "You are trying to take over this old man's property." She got furious. She pointed her finger at me and accused me of slander, insisting at the top of her lungs that their love was real. I ignored her and turned to the old man. "The property palace on your forehead is wide and full," I told him. "This shows you come from a wealthy family. You own at least one house." I paused, letting my glowing eyes look deeper. But wait, I see something different now. A black aura is covering the property palace on your forehead. This is an ill omen. It indicates someone will take over your house. I pointed directly at the angry young lady. "She is planning to steal your home. She tricked you into a fake marriage. She is planning to take your money to buy a house for her other boyfriend. Her plan is to abandon you as soon as the house title is transferred to her name." I looked right into the woman's eyes. "You are going to abandon him the very next day." She broke down crying loudly, strongly denying my claim, but I confidently pointed at a spot on her face. "Look at the mole on your left eyebrow," I said. Its color leans toward deep black. This mark is known as the mole of deception and cunning. People who have it have bad intentions. They usually specialize in gaining others' trust just to scam them later. I stepped closer to her, directly confronting her. "You use this trick to defraud the elderly, and this isn't the first time you've done this." She panicked completely. She lunged forward, trying to attack me, but the bystanders who had gathered around quickly intervened, grabbing her and holding her back. The old man sat heavily on the ground. He let out a massive sigh of relief and looked up at me, thanking me for saving his life.
Ding. Triple reading mission is a success.
My internal system chimed again, showing an alert that it was calculating my rewards. Then, the golden message appeared.
Rewards received. Remaining lifespan has increased by 30 days.
But that wasn't all. I received extra congratulations for earning a huge cash reward of $1 million. I looked down at my phone. A wave of deep relief washed over me. I finally survived, I whispered to myself. I even got rich for the bonus. This power is insane. After finishing my mission, I stood up and announced to the gathered crowd that my working hours for today were officially over. The crowd went wild. They begged me to stay for a while longer. Someone from the back shouted an offer of $100,000 for just one extra reading. Then, the girl I had helped earlier, the one with the scammer fiance, stepped in and offered me $500,000. The crowd's excitement grew out of control. They started shouting out tempting financial offers, waving cash and phones in the air. Suddenly, guards wearing sharp black suits stepped into the crowd, physically clearing a path. The noise died down. An elegant man stepped forward. He introduced himself as Edward. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and presented a black bank card worth exactly $5 million.
For just one extra reading,
Edward said. The crowd was shocked and absolutely stunned by the massive amount of money offered. I looked at the black card, then up at Edward. I calmly rejected the offer, apologizing that today's quota was full, but Edward wouldn't take no for an answer. The wealthy man insisted, trying to convince me that rules can be broken.
Humans are flexible.
He added smoothly.
We can adapt to exceptional circumstances. If $5 million isn't enough to convince you, I will increase the amount.
But I completely ignored the offer. I looked down at my phone, noting that it was almost 3. The system only asked me to open the stall until 3 p.m. I didn't know what would happen if I was still working beyond working hours. Better safe than sorry. So I firmly reiterated that it was time for me to leave, and I would not change my mind. I calmly picked up my bag and turned away, leaving the powerful leader standing right there with his useless black card in his hand. Edward stood frozen, shocked by the sudden rejection in front of the civil affairs office. Edward's guards whispered, thinking about how this man had lived half his life used to being obeyed by everyone. They marveled at the fact that this was the very first time he had met someone who couldn't be tempted by his money. Later that night, I returned home and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. But while I slept, the internet caught fire. Social media platforms exploded with my news. Someone had recorded a video of me rejecting Edward's multi-million offer, and it trended instantly with millions of views. Soon, news spread confirming the extreme accuracy of my 3 readings that day. Those short video clips proved my worth. Overnight, I earned the title of the legendary fortune teller of the Civil Affairs Office. Media influencers and the ultra-wealthy began a frantic, desperate search to find me. Offers to track me down reached insane amounts, easily exceeding 7 figures. For these rich elites, their biggest dream became just to exchange a single word with me. But I didn't care about any of that. I suddenly woke up in the dark. A new notification pinged in my mind.
New mission acquired.
The system set a mission related to homicide crimes. The location? Right in front of the Criminal Investigation Building at night. The rules were different this time. It stipulated that the reading method must be using tarot cards. My goal was to receive 3 clients related to criminal cases. I had to succeed in reading their fortunes and uncovering their darkest secrets with extreme accuracy. So, I didn't waste any time. I put on dark winter clothes and headed straight to the Criminal Investigation Building in the dead of night. I set up my spot right outside the main doors. I carefully displayed my tarot cards on a small mat and put up a handwritten sign explaining my specialty in murder cases. Almost immediately, a police officer noticed me. He approached me quickly and he looked incredibly angry. He shouted right in my face, questioning my presence in such a highly sensitive security area.
Do you realize what building you are sitting in front of?
He scolded me loudly. He sternly reminded me that this secure plaza was not a night market to display my services. Then, he firmly ordered me to pack up my things and leave immediately. I looked up at him, filled with exhaustion. I argued that my session wasn't blocking any traffic or official police work. I begged him to just let me stay for 2 hours so I could finish my work. The officer flatly rejected my plea. He refused to let me stay for even a single minute. He pointed a finger at me and threatened to call his colleagues to forcibly remove me if I didn't comply and leave right now. But my life was on the line. So, I clung tightly to my spot. I held my warm thermal mug in both hands, looking up at him, declaring my absolute refusal to leave. Before the officer could grab me, another officer with very sharp features appeared from the shadows, asking about the cause of the commotion. At the exact same time, the heavy glass doors of the building slid open. A senior detective stepped outside into the cold night to see exactly what was going on. I saw my chance. As the angry officer turned away, I spoke up. "I have important evidence," I said clearly. A senior detective, the one who had just walked out of the heavy glass doors, stopped in his tracks. He turned to look at me. His eyes were filled with interest and seriousness.
What is the nature of the evidence you claim to know?
He asked. I looked back at him and replied coolly, I don't know anything yet, 'cause I haven't read the fortune yet. The detective's face turned red with anger. He thought I was mocking them. He pointed a finger at me and ordered me to leave at once. He turned away in pure annoyance, fully ready to return to the building and completely ignore me. Suddenly, a luxury black car tore down the street. It stopped right in front of the building with a loud, ear-piercing screech of brakes. A woman threw her door open. She had a completely terrified expression on her face. She rushed straight toward the police, begging for help. Her legs gave out and she fell to her knees right there on the pavement. She broke down, crying and begging the detectives for any new news. She reached out and grabbed the senior detective's jacket, pleading through her heavy tears to tell her if they had found her little daughter. The detective's face softened. He sympathized with her tragic situation. He gently asked her to stand up so he could calm her down.
The search teams are currently examining surveillance cameras very carefully,
he explained, helping her back to her feet. He confirmed that the entire second team was combing the city streets for the child. He promised her that they would contact her the very second they found any lead or information. But the woman's husband wasn't having it. He jumped in, shouting angrily at the detectives.
48 hours have passed,
he screamed, reminding them of the lost time. He blamed them for missing the golden time for the search, a deadline the police had set themselves. Heartbreak cracked his voice as he explained that the chance of finding her alive was fading by the minute. He completely broke down, asking why they had failed to find a single piece of evidence so far. I couldn't just sit there. I joined the conversation. I can help, I offered, holding out my deck. Just draw a tarot card. The detective whipped his head toward me. He got absolutely furious. He shouted right in my face, telling me to be quiet and not interfere with police business. But the desperate father didn't care. He rushed away from the cops and came straight toward me. He emotionally challenged me to use my abilities to find his missing daughter's exact location. The detective stepped forward, trying to push the father away. He tried to calm him down, insisting loudly that I was just a young fraud. But the father fought back. He resisted the police, completely ignoring their warnings. To him, I was his last hope, since the police had totally failed their mission. With wild eyes, he offered me any amount of money I wanted if I could just guide them to his little girl. I calmly refused his money. I held up my deck and simply asked him to cut the cards and draw one with his left hand. The father's hand shook as he reached out. He drew a tarot card. It showed 3 swords crossed in front of a giant blue moon. I looked down at the drawn card. It was the 3 of swords, but it was reversed. The pain is fading, I read out loud. I focused my mind as my internal system booted up.
The suffering is about to end.
The system told me. It instantly began analyzing the environmental features surrounding the missing child.
Detecting high humidity. Detecting the sound of clashing metal. Detecting volatile chemical smells in the surrounding atmosphere.
I looked up at the terrified parents. Reassure yourselves, I told everyone. The child is still alive. The mother let out a loud gasp. She collapsed back onto the ground, crying violently with pure joy after hearing the good news. I turned and spoke directly to the police. The child is in the northern part of the city. The place she is in is very near a body of water. I closed my eyes, letting the system guide my words. The area around her looks deserted and very wide. You can hear the sound of ringing bells clearly in that area. The detectives frowned, but it all made sense. The description perfectly fit the deserted shipping dock full of massive metal cranes. Right next to it was a massive clock tower that made loud ringing sounds. Then I delivered the final blow. I surprised the police and the mother by saying, "The kidnapper is someone you know very well." They froze. "The kidnapper reeks of a very strong paint smell," I explained. "And I don't mean fresh paint. It is an old deep-seated smell. This smell stuck to his skin because he is constantly working in a paint-filled environment." I looked right at the mother. "Think of someone you know who fits this description." The husband gasped. He realized in total shock that the description fit a person named Carter. The wife's eyes widened as she remembered.
"He is a renovation contractor,"
she cried out. She explained that they had just argued with him earlier over his fee. She added that Carter had made threats and used very harsh words during their last fight. The father confirmed it.
"Carter came to our house earlier today to pick up his tools. I remember it clearly. The smell of paint was coming off him so strongly."
The senior detective, Commander Miller, didn't waste a single second. He pulled out his phone and ordered his men to immediately investigate contractor Carter. He demanded that Carter's geographic location be tracked as quickly as possible. In seconds, police cars rushed off into the night to search. I just remained sitting calmly in my spot. I picked up my thermal mug and watched it as the system flashed a new message.
Mission progress updated.
I took a sip from my mug, breathing a sigh of relief. I had successfully completed a third of my daily mission. Exactly 1 hour passed. The police cars quickly returned to the building. The doors opened, and the mother rushed forward. She hugged her infant daughter tightly to her chest, sobbing tears of absolute joy after her rescue. The baby was safe. I just sat back and watched the beautiful scene. Commander Miller walked over to me. He looked down at me and told me the kidnapper was successfully arrested. He confirmed they had found him in the exact deserted place I had described. I responded humbly. The credit for the rescue goes to the police's efforts, I pointed out. I am nothing more than a simple fortune teller. Commander Miller rejected my modesty. He told me to stop downplaying my abilities. Then, his eyes grew dark. The detective accused me of having prior knowledge of the kidnapping case details.
Withholding information in a criminal case is a major crime.
He warned me sharply.
And obtaining this information through illegal means is punishable by law.
He sternly confirmed that both cases would hold me criminally liable. I stood my ground and defended myself. Did I hide any information from you? I asked indignantly. Before he could answer, a white Jeep rushed into the plaza, interrupting our tense conversation. A female forensic doctor rushed out of the building doors, loudly calling for Commander Miller. She ran up to him, out of breath.
The DNA results for the body found in the river have finally come out,
she told him. Then she shook her head. She confirmed with deep regret that no match for the body's data was found anywhere in the criminal database. The detective sighed, expressing deep frustration at the total lack of a match to identify the victim. He quickly asked about the list of missing men that they had previously filtered for a possible match. The doctor strongly denied any match with anyone from the missing males list.
The body skeleton is notably large,
she explained.
Despite the heavy damage and the missing parts of the pelvic bones, the remaining anatomical angles strongly suggest the body belongs to a male.
She reiterated that they had officially excluded all missing males because they simply didn't match the new evidence. She held the thick investigation file tightly in her hands, completely puzzled by this impossible medical mystery. I couldn't help myself. I suddenly intervened with a confident voice. The body doesn't belong to a man at all, I confirmed. Both the doctor and the detective jumped, totally surprised by my interference. They looked at me, confused, and asked if I meant the body was female. Your investigation and search path are completely wrong, I pointed out. It is entirely natural that you didn't find a match because you are looking in the wrong direction. The forensic doctor glared at me. Her eyes were filled with doubt and suspicion because I was interfering in her professional work. She sternly told me that what they do is forensic scientific analysis that absolutely does not accept guesswork. She began explaining in complex detail the scientific angles between the third lumbar vertebrae and the pelvic fragments. She confidently confirmed that all those exact measurements matched male characteristics perfectly. I didn't argue with her science, I just held out my deck of cards. I offered her to draw a tarot card so I could prove I was right and solve the mystery of the body. She rolled her eyes but pulled a card. She drew the Temperance Empress, but it was in a variable version. The card pointed to the illusion of abundance. It showed a drawing of a pregnant empress with a violently split belly. My system scanned the data instantly. It analyzed the body and pointed out a massive secret: long-term consumption of external male hormones. The victim had been taking male hormones continuously for years, I explained to the shocked doctor. This heavy consumption led to secondary bone growth and severe skeletal enlargement. I looked at Commander Miller, ready to shock everyone. The victim was actually a professional athlete. I identified her specialty with extreme precision. She practiced throwing, track, and field sports. I looked back down at the Empress card's symbolism, which represents motherhood. A dark feeling washed over me as I revealed a tragic detail. She had an abortion just before her murder. Or, I raised another grim possibility. She might have just given birth before the crime occurred. The doctor objected in pure astonishment.
That is impossible,
she cried out.
The body's uterus is entirely missing. How did you deduce these precise details without a medical exam?
She stared at me in total disbelief. I answered her calmly. Go back and re-examine the pubic symphysis surface of the body, I told her. I guided her precisely to look at the dorsal side of that specific bone area. If you find a depression or an old cavity in that bone spot, then that depression is conclusive evidence of an old injury during childbirth. But, I added darkly, if there are fresh and clear tear marks in the exact same place, then this confirms she had a very recent abortion right before her death. The doctor was completely convinced by my solid logic. She immediately turned and asked the detective for permission to return to the morgue to re-examine the bones. The detective looked sharply at me. He pointed a finger at my chest, threatening me if my claims turned out to be wrong. He vowed that he wouldn't let me leave this plaza all night if I was lying to them.
Ding.
I saw a message from my system confirming that I had just finished 2/3 of my mission after reading for the doctor. Only one person left. I maintained my composure. I held out my tarot cards again, this time asking the detective to draw one. I spoke directly to Commander Miller in a tone full of confidence. You want to try my tarot reading skill? Miller responded with heavy annoyance.
What do you want from me now?
He asked. I will give you the last remaining reading for today, completely for free, I told him. I spread my cards smoothly on my small table and offered the detective a chance to read the problem troubling his heart. The detective scoffed. He mockingly denied having any complex or problem on his mind. I just smiled calmly. Every human has secrets hidden deep in their depths, I confirmed. I glanced down at my phone, hinting heavily. Everyone hides secrets, especially police officers. Before he could respond, time jumped forward. The massive clock on the nearby building was nearing midnight. The doctor's voice called out from an open window above us in the lab. She confirmed that my predictions were absolutely correct. She looked out the window down at us, confirming she found clear damage marks on the pubic symphysis area of the body.
Precise tests showed heavy traces of testosterone in the samples.
She yelled down. Total shock appeared on Commander Miller's face. He finally realized the victim was indeed a woman. The doctor continued shouting her findings. She explained that she quickly searched and found the missing records of a student from a local sports school. She showed that the records belonged to a shot-put athlete who had disappeared exactly 3 months ago. She excitedly confirmed that their investigation path was finally heading in the right direction. Commander Miller looked away from the window. His face was deadly serious. He concluded aloud that they were now dealing with 2 entirely separate cases. He explained that the first was a kidnapping incident, and he pointed out that the second was a brutal murder crime. The commander looked at me. He finally admitted that the young man sitting outside on the street was right in all his predictions with extreme accuracy. Miller looked down at his watch. It was nearing 1 a.m. His gaze changed, becoming much firmer. You have 5 minutes left, I reminded the commander softly. If you want to uncover the secret of your knot, I calmly invited him to step forward and know his fortune. Before he could reach for a card, the screech of tires ripped through the night air. A white car was driving at insane speed straight down the street. It lost control, crashing violently against the curb. The entire vehicle flew high into the air, flipping over right near where the commander and I were sitting. Commander Miller instantly screamed, ordering the rescue of those injured in the horrific accident. Police officers rushed out of the building with heavy fire extinguishers, running straight toward the overturned and burning car. My eyes flashed. "Stop!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. I strictly warned the commander against letting anyone approach the left side of the car. "The fuel tank is on the left! It is about to explode!" An officer was already there, trying desperately to put out the fire. But through the flames, I saw something terrifying. Bullet holes were completely clear on the car door. Boom! A massive, sudden explosion happened. A ball of orange fire blasted outward, violently blowing away the officer who was standing near it. He literally flew through the air, completely affected by the crushing force of the horrific explosion. He slammed into the ground. He was shown sitting on the ground, crying out in immense pain from his fresh injury, while the rest of the brave officers continued putting out the blazing fire from a safe distance. Sirens wailed as an ambulance finally arrived to transport the injured from the chaotic accident site. Miller slowly turned his head. He directed his gaze straight toward me. His entire way of thinking about me had completely changed. As the fire burned behind us, the commander realized deep down that this young man wasn't just a fraud as he had thought. I picked up my tarot deck and began shuffling the cards smoothly. The clock was nearing the end of my set time. I need to finish the mission now. Commander Miller looked at me as if I were a mysterious entity completely beyond human understanding. After a long moment of silence, he finally agreed to the experience.
Fine,
he said quietly. He asked to draw a card to know his own fortune. He reached out and drew a single card from the deck. He turned it over and showed it to me to interpret. The drawn card represented the symbol of justice, but it was reversed. My internal system hummed to life, translating the deep meaning of this card.
Reversed justice.
The system whispered in my mind.
Meaning, distorted justice. Deep internal corruption.
The system immediately began extracting basic, hidden information regarding the massive secret Commander Miller was hiding. I looked up at him. "Your firearm is missing exactly one bullet," I told him, shocking him instantly. Before he could react, I brought up a painful memory. 3 years ago, you led a major anti-drug case. During a GEU operation, your undercover informant was killed in cold blood. Miller's face went completely pale. "You believed all along that the drug dealers exposed your informant," I explained. "But the tarot cards hide a completely different truth." The commander leaned in closely. He asked with extreme tension and heavy anxiety about the true meaning behind my words. I pointed my finger directly at the massive glass doors of the police station behind him. The person who leaked the secret information and the same person who fired the fatal shot is currently present inside this very building you are standing in front of. Miller gasped. I stressed my point, locking eyes with him. "The traitor is hiding very close to you, Commander, and as decisive proof, that traitor's gun is still missing that specific bullet to this very day." Ding. My internal system chimed loudly, announcing my total success in the mission. It confirmed I had helped uncover the threads of a major serial case, and I had also managed to save a police officer's life from certain death by the burning car.
Perfect, and complete rating for performance in this mission.
The system praised. Then came the reward details.
8% decrease in the diseased cells within host's body. Lifespan increased by 60 days. Cash reward, $2 million.
Right on cue, I received a bank message on my phone confirming the direct deposit of the massive amount. Wow. Again and again, I never stopped to say that this system is so OP. No wonder people who loved recap channels are dying to have a system. Later that night, I finally made it home. I was exhausted. I lay down on my sofa to get some much-needed rest, but suddenly, I was surprised by a new mission notification flashing in the dark. I sat up and read the mission details. This time, the system required me to go to an international bilingual kindergarten. It set the exact location directly in front of the main gate of Stanton Kindergarten. The rules had changed again. The system stipulated that I use the bone palpation method to test and predict children's talents and futures. The challenge aimed to receive 3 clients and provide flawless, accurate readings. The system was strict. It required total success with all 3 clients to pass the mission. I wondered at the system's strange choice of a kindergarten as the site for my new mission. Then it hit me. I realized that Stanton Kindergarten was considered the most prestigious private educational institution in the entire city. I remembered reading that the annual tuition fees there were completely exorbitant. I quickly concluded that the children enrolled there only came from incredibly powerful and wealthy families. I was absolutely certain that the system was intentionally raising the difficulty level in its consecutive missions. I reflected on the generous reward I had just received from my previous mission, but then I remembered sadly that my total remaining life didn't exceed 4 months. I thought about the dire consequences if I ever decided to stop executing these daily missions. I knew well that the aggressive cancer cells in my body wouldn't give me any more time. I had no choice but to win. I decided here that whatever the mission, I was going to finish all of it. After all, my life was the most important thing right now. The very next day, I arrived at the location to find myself completely surrounded by luxury cars in front of the massive kindergarten gate. I quickly set up my spot. I put up a simple cardboard sign offering talent and future prediction services for children. Within minutes, 2 security guards carrying heavy batons approached the main gate. They spotted me immediately. One of them marched over and questioned me in a very sharp, angry tone about why I was there and sitting in that spot. I looked up and answered him with a calm smile. "I am just a street vendor offering my services." The guard completely lost it. He shouted right in my face, reminding me loudly that this was a highly private educational institution. He sternly confirmed that offering any services in front of the gate was strictly forbidden. He tightened his grip on his baton and threatened to take strict physical measures if I didn't pack my things and leave immediately. I didn't move. I simply pointed with my feet to a faded red line drawn on the ground. I am standing on the city's public sidewalk, I explained clearly. I pointed toward the steps. The kindergarten's private boundaries start from those nearby stairs, not this sidewalk. I insisted with complete confidence that I had not crossed the legal boundaries of their private property. The guard flatly rejected my logical justifications. He considered my presence unacceptable regardless of any painted lines. He argued angrily that my poor appearance and sitting there ruined the general pristine look of the expensive street. I defended myself firmly, pointing out that I wasn't causing any blockage for emergency routes or fire lanes. When he took a step closer, I took out my smartphone. I directed a stern warning right to the guard's face in case he tried to use violence. I threatened him that I would file a formal police complaint against him for using excessive force. I will not hesitate to document this and post the video clip all over social media, I warned. The guard quickly backed off a bit after this direct threat. He put his baton away but ordered me to stay as far as possible from the main gate. He stressed aggressively that I must not obstruct the movement of the wealthy parents coming to pick up their children. Finally, they left me alone. I didn't care if they were forcing me to move away. I needed to finish my mission today, here. Not long after, an elegant lady wearing a stunning red dress approached me. She was holding her young child's hand tightly. She was my first customer. The lady looked at my sign and asked curiously what exactly I could read or predict for her child's future. I calmly explained that I could read the future and identify deep hidden talents. I added that the fee for the examination was entirely left to her discretion. The lady was pleasantly surprised at how cheap and easy the service was. Without hesitation, she pushed her small, chubby child toward me. She asked me to check his abilities right away.
I want to know if he is qualified to enter Harvard University in the future.
She expressed her deep desire.
Or perhaps his academic future lies in Yale instead.
She began bragging loudly to anyone listening that her family was already preparing for his prestigious university future. She explained proudly that they had even set up a massive financial fund specifically for his elite university fees. The little boy suddenly got extremely angry. He rejected all this talk, screaming at the top of his lungs,
"I want to eat meat!"
I reached out and grabbed the boy's wrist to activate my bone reading system. The energy flowed into my fingertips. I looked up at the lady with a calm smile. Harvard and Yale are completely out of the question for your child. Heavy signs of disappointment and extreme frustration immediately appeared on her face after hearing my blunt prediction. She heavily objected to my words, considering my quick judgment far too final and highly exaggerated. She quickly defended her child, noting that despite his obvious greed and intense love for food, he was extremely and noticeably intelligent. She claimed proudly that his private piano teacher constantly praised the size and strength of his hands while playing complex pieces. I stopped smiling and asked her seriously, "Do you really want to hear the naked truth?" She responded with anger and raw emotion, strongly confirming her prior awareness of the immense difficulty of him getting into Harvard. I pointed my hand toward the boy. A top culinary school is the most suitable place for him, I explained simply. He will be an outstanding student and an absolute genius in the field of cooking. Without a doubt, she became instantly furious amidst the loud laughter of the gathered bystanders. She pointed at me, accusing me of talking total nonsense. She shouted, asking if I had any idea of the massive amounts of money she spent on his elite education and upbringing annually. She quickly listed his expensive lessons, including private piano, competitive horse riding, and professional golf. She pointed out furiously that the cost of his private tutors alone exceeded $2 million a year. She expressed her extreme anger, deeply insulted by me, describing her precious son as just a cook. I kept my voice completely even. Financial spending has absolutely nothing to do with where true talent lies, I explained. I squeezed the boy's wrist gently. His wrist bones, though currently covered in a thick layer of fat, upon careful examination and deep palpation, turn out to be much wider and significantly stronger than average people's. I let go of his wrist and touched his fingers. His finger joints have exceptional and incredibly rare flexibility. I looked up at the angry mother. This specific skeletal structure is known in ancient times as pulling and hammering hands. It signifies immense physical skill. She paused, clearly impressed by this ancient term, believing it signified great historical importance and high social status. I smiled, confirming that this physical makeup was indeed amazing and highly unique. Then, I shocked her completely by explaining that this exact build is considered an innate and perfect physical talent for tossing a heavy walk professionally. I continued my detailed description. The child's fingers are thick and short, which heavily enhances his grip control. I turned his hand over. His palms are very thick and naturally resistant to high heat. These physical traits give him a precise and perfect ability to control high temperatures while cooking. I turned my attention away from her and directed my question straight to the little boy. Do you really enjoy playing the piano as your mother says? The little one immediately screamed angrily that he hated it.
The sound seems hideous and annoying to me,
he yelled. He heavily complained about the extreme, daily annoyance caused by his strict teacher's metronome. The mother gasped and scolded her child angrily, trying desperately to silence him from revealing these embarrassing facts in public. She reminded him sternly that he had played a very complex song for his grandmother just yesterday, and he played it quite well. The boy admitted innocently that he only did it to trick his grandmother into buying him a large fast food meal. He clenched his small fists emotionally and directed his angry shouting right toward his shocked mother. He complained loudly about the terrible, bad taste of the food she cooked for him herself. He confirmed confidently that her food lacked deep flavors and only contained a very sharp, salty taste. Then, he highly praised the delicious taste of the cooked meat prepared by their maid at home. He described precisely, like a true professional, exactly how the maid puts a large piece of yellow rock sugar in the pot to perfectly balance the flavor profile. He effortlessly completed his description of the cooking process by mentioning her pouring in dark soy sauce at the exact right moment to deeply enhance both the color and the final taste. I looked back at the mother and explained very seriously, his taste buds exceed average people's sensitivity by exactly 10 times. I confirmed that he possessed a highly unique, divine, innate gift for analyzing and tasting complex flavors precisely. I added a heavy warning, telling her that forcing him to learn the piano is a complete and total destruction of the bright future of a promising 3-star Michelin chef. The mother stood completely stunned upon hearing my detailed description of her son's bright future in high-level cooking. She hesitated for a long moment, looking down at the large amount of money in her hand, then at her son, and finally at me in total confusion. Slowly, she threw the thick stack of banknotes right onto my mat in surrender, fully acknowledging her absolute defeat. She directed her words to me in a sharp tone, admitting the deep cruelty of my merciless honesty. She gave in to reality. She turned and told her happy son that if he really wanted to cook, she finally agreed to let him learn how to properly prepare the delicious chicken dishes he loved so much. The gathered parents began to crowd around me, deeply impressed by the display. They started begging and asking me to examine their children immediately. One worried mother pushed her way to the front, complaining loudly that her son was always distracted and daydreaming, practically begging for my help. But before I could answer her, a very familiar man stepped forward. Edward, the wealthy man who had tried to buy me off with $5 million earlier, intervened arrogantly. He pushed the other parents aside, announcing loudly that he was my second customer and he had his young daughter with him. He crossed his arms and claimed loudly that what I did with the first child wasn't a real skill worthy of praise at all. He justified this claim by saying the little fat boy's physical appearance directly suggested his obvious love for food and cooking. He added mockingly that anyone with eyes could have guessed this obvious result easily. I completely ignored his childish belittlement. I looked at him and asked him calmly and confidently what exactly he wanted to know. Edward puffed out his chest. He answered that he came here today specifically to test my abilities and see if I truly possessed true impressive insight. He noted that everyone in his elite circle described me as a miracle and spread news of me like a living legend. He confirmed his desire to know if I could truly dive into the depths of a person and see the naked truth. He proudly introduced his very quiet daughter to the large crowd of bystanders, calling her Lily. He bragged loudly to everyone that Lily was the officially recognized genius girl in the entire elite school. He began recounting her massive achievements. He told the crowd proudly that she had successfully memorized hundreds of complex classic poems by the age of 3. He added that she had fully mastered complex mental arithmetic with superior adult-level skill at age 5. He explained proudly that she was currently teaching herself the complex foundations of advanced calculus. The gathered bystanders were deeply amazed, and their loud voices of pure admiration rose at a small child's ability to study such difficult math. Someone in the back wondered in total amazement and awe if this little girl was the legendary, once-in-a-generation genius they always talk about on the news. Edward smiled, enjoying the attention. He turned to me and asked me to examine her bones to officially prove my alleged skill in front of everyone. He asked me mockingly and boastfully,
"Is my daughter a new reincarnation of Einstein? Or perhaps a new and vastly improved birth of Marie Curie?"
I calmly stepped closer and placed my hand gently on the little girl's head to begin my precise examination. My internal system booted up instantly. It began analyzing her brain and bones, scanning deep within her.
Developmental delay detected.
The system reported.
Cause: severe malnutrition and excessive psychological pressure. Logic area in the brain is completely inactive.
I closed my eyes as the scan went deeper.
Subject relies entirely on mechanical memory. Subject lives in a constant state of psychological terror and morbidly pleasing others.
I opened my eyes. I evaluated her so-called talent. It was completely fake. It was just a high capacity for rote memorization caused by extreme intimidation. I realized sadly that this sweet little girl wasn't a genius at all. She was forcibly turned into a memorization machine by her cruel parents. Edward crossed his arms. He wondered arrogantly why I was completely silent and unable to speak after the exam.
"What's wrong?"
He mocked me loudly.
"Were you unable to grasp the high quality of these rare genius bones?"
I dropped my hand from her head. I looked right at him. "She isn't a genius at all," I stated directly and flatly. Edward froze. I shocked him and the entire crowd of bystanders. I directed a very sharp look right at the boastful father. She is just a highly skilled actress playing a role that was forced upon her cruelly. Loud gasps of total shock and absolute amazement rose from Edward and all the bystanders at my unexpected statement. The little girl slowly looked up at me. Her small eyes were overflowing with a mix of surprise and deep fear at finally being found out. Edward turned red with anger. He immediately asked his little girl to start reciting complex poetry right there in front of me. He pushed her aggressively to do a super complex classical poem just to show off her skills to the crowd. She flinched, but she started reciting it. She put on a fake, strained smile, and the words poured out non-stop. She kept going with crazy smoothness and perfect, robotic memorization. She continued rattling off the long, ancient verses under his proud, arrogant gaze. She finished another massive part with insane precision. Suddenly, I interrupted her. I reached out and gently put my finger on her forehead to shut her up. She stopped instantly. I turned back to the dad. "She doesn't actually understand a single word she is saying," I told him. "She's just memorizing sounds and repeating them mechanically in her head." I pointed at his daughter. "Her brain is exactly like a recording machine that just repeats what it is fed without any real consciousness." The dad got deeply annoyed.
"What is wrong with her having this specific talent?"
he asked angrily. He defended her, proudly saying her memory alone was an incredible gift. "I agree it's a gift," I said softly, "but ask yourself about the heavy price she is paying for it." I told him to look closely at her small fingers. I picked up her hand and revealed deep scars and fresh bite marks on her fingers, as solid, undeniable proof of her extreme ongoing anxiety. Then, I added another dark note about the bone structure at the back of her head. "Look here," I pointed out. The completely flat back of her head and her heavy brow bone reflect a very specific mental state. Kids with this exact bone structure are suffering deeply inside. I explained these physical signs showed she was ultra-sensitive and dealt with massive, crushing self-doubt. I added that she had an obsessive, desperate need for total validation from others at absolutely any cost. I looked down at the little girl. "I was watching the way you looked at your dad earlier," I told her gently. "I didn't see any love in your eyes for him." I insisted that all I saw in her tiny gaze was pure terror and absolute fear. I confronted her gently with the dark truth. "You are scared to sleep at night, aren't you? Because you are terrified of messing up a single word tomorrow." She started crying softly. I kept exposing her deep fear of failing any test. Her terror comes from the constant fear of being locked in a dark, windowless study room as punishment. That broke her. She broke down crying hysterically. The dad completely lost his temper. He screamed right at me, accusing me of talking total nonsense. The angry man pointed a finger at my chest and threatened to call the cops and get me arrested for talking to her. He reached down and grabbed her arm roughly, trying to drag her away from my mat.
Don't listen to this lunatic's garbage.
He yelled at her. She lost it. She began screaming and crying hysterically, fighting against his grip. She collapsed onto the hard ground, completely broken, while her dad and everyone around just stood there completely shocked. She kept sobbing bitterly. In the middle of her massive breakdown, she began mumbling random lines from the complex poem. She continued wailing, repeating broken fragments of the forced memorization she was put through daily. She stayed slumped on the cold ground in a total, terrifying mental collapse. The wild hysteria and non-stop crying continued while everyone watched, completely stunned. She screamed loudly, refusing to be forced to memorize ever again. She looked up at her dad, begging him through her heavy tears not to hit her anymore. Edward stepped back as if he had been slapped. He looked around, completely shocked and deeply embarrassed in front of the large, judging crowd. He shook his head. I didn't let him off the hook. I advised the stunned dad to take her to a professional psychiatrist ASAP. Medical help right now might save her before it is too late, I told him grimly. I warned him that if he waited just 2 more years, she would get much worse. I explained clearly that constant heavy pressure would lead to an absolute, irreversible mental and psychological breakdown. I added that the girl would lose her so-called genius entirely. I confirmed with cold certainty that she would eventually turn into a highly dangerous, high IQ sociopath. She kept screaming on the ground, refusing to ever memorize again, while Edward stood there completely helpless. Slowly, he dropped to his knees. He hugged her tightly, crying his own tears, and apologized repeatedly after finally realizing how badly he had messed up his own child. He gently picked her up in his arms and left the kindergarten without saying another word.
Ding. Successfully completed 2 out of 3 correct readings.
Just then, a massive luxury car pulled up. It announced the arrival of a big-shot new client. An old lady looking incredibly rich and highly dignified stepped out of the back seat. People in the crowd immediately began to whisper. They realized she was my 3rd client, and they recognized her as the powerful head of the massive Sterling Group. My system quickly scanned her as she approached. It found she possessed a massive aura of pure power and total authority. She smiled warmly and asked if I had one last reading left. I answered her calmly, confirming I had one final shot for the day. I asked what she wanted to know. She stepped aside to introduce her young grandson.
I want to know if he is capable of taking over the massive family business in the future.
She asked.
I want to know if he is truly worthy of keeping my empire alive.
I told her I needed to physically check the kid's bone structure to give her a proper answer. Suddenly, her private police and bodyguards stepped in to stop me, aggressively questioning my intentions. But the old lady simply raised her hand, silencing them instantly, firmly ordering them to let me do my job. I gently placed my hand directly on the young boy's head to start the exam. Deep in my eyes, a faint blue glow sparked to life. My system's exploration skills became fully active. The system quickly told me the boy's skull was incredibly flat.
Meaning, total lack of competence.
The system reported. The deep scan continued. It showed absolutely no leadership signs and a 0 sense of responsibility. However, it found a massive, undeniable spender trait. His overall fate was instantly labeled by the system as a top-tier wealth squanderer. I moved my hands to check his palm. The lines there classified him as a top-tier passionate explorer. I pulled back, having the final result. It confirmed the grandson would be the main, direct reason the entire family fortune gets totally destroyed. I looked seriously at the old lady, getting ready to tell her the harsh truth. I confidently told her that her grandson was absolutely not fit to lead her massive business. Her warm expression immediately turned to cold anger. She demanded a highly logical reason for my blunt judgment. I pointed directly to the boy's hand and told her to look closely at it. I explained that his fingers were unusually long, while his palm was completely thin and very flat. I asked the boy to close his hand. I showed her that when he closed it tightly, a stiff piece of paper could easily slide right through the large gaps between his fingers. This specific physical trait is known in ancient physiognomy as the wealth-leaking hand, I explained. I used an old famous proverb. His hand is like rushing water passing through without leaving a single trace. I added another dark saying, gold will pass right through his hands without making a single sound. I then pointed to a specific, shiny spot on the kid's forehead. I noted that the bones there were clearly prominent and unusually high. I added that the skin color there looked exceptionally shiny. These signs prove he has a wild, free spirit that absolutely cannot be suppressed or caged, I explained. I predicted he wouldn't be able to settle down in this boring city in the future. I insisted it would be totally impossible for him to stay trapped inside corporate offices. I strongly warned her against forcing him to take over her massive wealth. I added that making him sit alone in a chairman's office signing boring contracts would be a huge, catastrophic mistake. If you do, I predicted grimly, in less than 10 years of taking the position, he will sell the entire group just to get rid of its chains. I explained further, as she stood there completely shocked, that he might sell the billion-dollar company just to buy a ticket for a ship to travel the world. Or maybe, I added, he will sell it just to satisfy a random sudden wish to go to the South Pole to see penguins. The old lady stood there in absolute horror, vividly imagining him hawking her massive historical companies for a simple toy. She asked me in total shock what I really meant by that. She was furious, loudly denying that her family's only beloved grandson would ever destroy their massive fortune. I answered her calmly, explaining that wasting wealth is highly relative. I added that her grandson would undoubtedly be a massive failure in the strict business world, but I quickly pointed out that things might be totally different in other fields. Her anger faded into curiosity. She asked with deep interest what kind of fields he would actually succeed in. I surprised her by saying the specific fields that suit him perfectly are the ones that involve spending massive amounts of money. I justified this crazy claim by saying the kid had a highly natural sensitivity to absolutely anything new and highly innovative. I continued explaining that the boy was filled to the brim with a huge desire and endless curiosity to discover the vast unknown. I suggested with a small smile that if her family's massive wealth was truly enough for generations and would never run out, then simply letting him spend it on his wild explorations could easily be seen as a good deed that brings the family immense luck. This child is destined to be a top-class, world-renowned explorer, I confidently asserted. Grandma Sterling looked down at her young grandson affectionately after hearing my detailed analysis. She gently touched his shoulder and asked him softly if he really wanted to be the chairman of the company. The boy looked up and asked innocently,
"If I am chairman, will it let me go hunt lions?"
She answered with a very heavy heart that the corporate position absolutely wouldn't let him do that. He firmly declared right there that he didn't want the boring job at all. He began shouting excitedly about his massive dream to travel to wild Africa. He added passionately that he also dreamed of exploring the freezing Antarctica. He kept enthusiastically listing his bold dreams, loudly announcing his future ambition to go to Mars. He grumbled angrily about how incredibly bored he was inside the strict kindergarten he totally hated. He heavily expressed his deep frustration with being forced to sit still, memorize, and recite boring lessons daily. Grandma Sterling smiled with full acceptance. She repeated my exact description of her grandson as a wealth spender. Then she laughed out loud, fully accepting the boy's wild nature for extreme spending and high adventure. She spoke proudly of the massive financial empire her family had built over 3 long generations. She confidently said this massive, unending fortune could definitely handle her grandson's crazy expenses no matter what they were. She added warmly that their decades of grueling hard work would be completely meaningless if they didn't use the money to make this child happy. Grandma Sterling turned to me and highly praised my courage. She noted I was the very first person brave enough to tell her the absolute truth to her face. She added I was the only one who ever dared to call her precious grandson a wealth waster right to her face. She waved her hand generously, loudly ordering her massive bodyguard to give me a very big reward. The guard quickly pulled out an exclusive, highly valuable black card to give to me. He held out his hand, passing on the grandma's message that her powerful family name would protect me in the future. I just sat calmly and never took the card, then started folding my cardboard banner. I shocked everyone in the crowd by flat out refusing the valuable black bank card. I smiled warmly while packing up my bag, clearly stating that my working hours for today were completely over. The grandma was totally baffled that I would ever reject such a massive amount of money. So, I turned and walked away with steady steps, explaining I had perfectly finished my 3 readings and absolutely wouldn't do more. I strictly said my time was up and I wouldn't provide any more services today. Taking extra money could bring heavy karmic consequences I don't need, I explained softly. I waved goodbye over my shoulder, pointing out that getting too involved with big money and powerful families was extremely risky. I concluded by saying I simply couldn't handle the heavy burden of that extra interference with fate. The old lady leaned down slowly to pick up her rejected card. She looked at my retreating back with deep admiration for my strict integrity. She smiled and whispered quietly to herself that this highly mysterious guy really interested her. I went straight home to eat dinner. While scrolling on my phone, I found out I had completely gone viral on the internet again. I read countless articles calling me a legendary master after high-quality videos of me refusing the sterling money spread everywhere. My shock was suddenly interrupted by my phone ringing loudly. It was Commander Miller, the detective I had met the night before. The detective warned me seriously over the phone.
Do not wander around these days,
he told me firmly. He told me top police officials were actively looking for me, constantly asking about my true identity and my strange powers. He added that the incredibly wealthy Sterling family was also using all their massive influence to search for me absolutely everywhere. I responded seriously, insisting I hadn't broken any laws at all, so the detective quickly reassures me. He knew I was innocent and the massive search wasn't for a crime. Then he broke the good news.
Your warning last night helped save a young officer's leg from total amputation after the car explosion.
He offered his full support and told me to call him immediately if I ever ran into any trouble. After the phone call, I got a new task notification from my system. I read the details carefully. I needed to go to the morning antique market to evaluate treasures. The system set the time strictly between 9 and 11 a.m. The rules changed again. This time, it required me to use written word analysis for my readings. As usual, I needed to take exactly 3 clients and give completely accurate readings to pass. But the system added a key condition. I absolutely must successfully expose fake antiques or prove the authenticity of real ones. I got up the next morning feeling energized. I started getting dressed for the new mission. I smiled at myself in the mirror, feeling genuinely excited about finding rare treasures in the huge market. I arrived at exactly 9 a.m. at the crowded, noisy antique market. I set up my spot quickly. I spread out my simple blue cloth on the stone floor right near the market's busy east gate. I put up a large cardboard sign saying I would evaluate antiques for absolutely free if my reading turned out to be wrong. I looked around. I noticed the market was completely full of old-timers carrying traditional, polished walnuts in their hands. I also spotted several young content creators walking around holding up cameras, live streaming the market. The owner of the next stall, a bald guy named Old Smith, started mocking me immediately. He hinted heavily that I was in the wrong place. He sarcastically advised me to go look for a real, decent job instead of wasting my time sitting on the dirty floor here. I answered him calmly. I confirmed I knew exactly where I was. I didn't get lost, I added with a smile. I came here on purpose to make some extra cash with my special skills. Old Smith burst out laughing loudly after hearing my confident reply. He immediately started bragging about his solid 20 years in the cutthroat antique business. He questioned loudly how someone so young could ever claim to evaluate real antiques through simple written word analysis. He thought to himself that this kid was either totally clueless about the market or he was just a bold scammer who came to mess with the other professional sellers. I defended my strange way of working. This field relies on deep insight and a very sharp eye, I explained quietly. Old Smith mocked the idea. He scoffed, claiming that analyzing written lines could never replace real, decades-long visual experience. I smiled confidently. I questioned how accurate the old seller's expert eye really was. Then, I shocked him completely by pointing my finger and revealing that the entire pile of antique coins sitting on his stall was just cheap, laser-engraved fakes. Total shock showed clearly on Old Smith's face when I insisted loudly that absolutely no real expert would ever buy his fake junk. Half an hour passed while I sat patiently, waiting for my first client. I noticed with some deep frustration that the busy passers-by were totally ignoring my small stall. I quickly realized people here only trusted traditional, old experts holding thick magnifying glasses. I concluded bitterly that they simply wouldn't trust a young guy who looked like a broke, unemployed scammer. Things finally changed when a guy in his early 20s approached cautiously. He was clutching a thick bundle wrapped tightly in dirty newspaper like it was something super precious. He approached the stall with very hesitant steps. Looking around suspiciously to make sure no one was watching, he whispered to me that he had just found a highly rare Ming Dynasty bowl at a nearby stall. The man said he bought it for $5,000, and he strongly believed it was worth way over $50,000. Old Smith leaned over and watched curiously, trying to see what exactly would happen with this nervous client. The old man looked at the supposed antique wrapped in the newspaper with deep contempt. He pulled his head back quickly after totally losing interest. He smiled sarcastically, instantly realizing it was just a common, cheap fake. He thought to himself that these terrible replicas were absolutely everywhere in this market. I looked calmly at the man. So what you need to do is write anything the first time you see the bowl. Write down that word using this paper. After the man wrote the word treasure on the paper, I completely ignored the hidden bowl. I focused absolutely all my attention on the single word written on paper. I started my deep analysis by pointing my finger to the top part of the written word. Then I slowly focused on the bottom part, which specifically represents the jade symbol in the language. The top of the word was written way too wide, I noted calmly. I pointed out that this heavy width completely overwhelmed the jade symbol sitting right below it. I looked up at him. This piece is not from any valuable official kilns. It is not even a decent folk kiln piece. I explained flatly that it was made in a tiny, totally irrelevant modern family workshop. I directed the disappointed guy's attention back to the bottom of the written word. I pointed out exactly where the dot inside the jade symbol was drawn, with way too much heavy pressure. I explained that this heavy brush pressure caused the black ink to heavily smudge and spread outward on the paper. The jade symbol, in the word metaphorically, represents the bowl's bottom base, I interpreted smoothly. I directly linked my observation of the ink smudge to the official maker's mark sitting at the very bottom of the bowl. I looked him dead in the eye and revealed the shocking truth. The mark on the bottom is completely fake. It is made from cheap jade powder, heavily mixed with modern glue. The guy protested instantly in massive shock. He insisted loudly that he had carefully checked the bottom mark himself before buying.
The mark pointed directly to the highly precious Chunhua period of the Ming Dynasty.
He insisted angrily. He added,
"The writing was completely clear, and the physical engraving was absolutely perfect."
He quickly pointed out the visible signs of natural wear and tear on the bottom that heavily suggested extreme old age. I calmly explained the harsh reality. The clear engraving is because it is absolutely brand new. As for the wear and tear, it is entirely fake and was done recently with rough sandpaper. The guy got totally furious. He aggressively accused me of lying, demanding to know how I could possibly judge a hidden antique without even touching it once. I smiled confidently. I dared the angry guy to physically break the expensive bowl right now to prove me right. I offered a massive bet. I will pay you exactly $100,000 right now if I am wrong. Then I explained exactly what would happen if it turned out to be a fake. I predicted that when broken, a thick white layer of industrial glue would clearly show on the inner broken edges. I quickly suggested a much safer alternative test. Use a lighter to heavily heat the base, I offered, and it will reveal the absolute truth. The guy hesitated for a tense second. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a plastic lighter. He unwrapped the bowl. As soon as he applied heavy heat directly to the bottom base, the fake ancient mark literally melted away before our eyes. Underneath the melted glue, it revealed modern English writing clearly saying, "Microwave safe." The guy dropped the bowl in total shock. The piece hit the stone floor and shattered violently into pieces. The thick white glue layer was completely clear on the broken parts. The gathering crowd was absolutely amazed at my strange ability to spot a fake without even touching it. They whispered, wondering out loud how I figured out the base was glued just by analyzing a single written word. The onlookers quickly realized this wasn't just a normal, boring fortune-telling session. They genuinely believed this young guy had supernatural insight, or perhaps a heavenly eye. A huge, dense crowd quickly gathered around my small stall. Everyone looked at me with intense curiosity and massive surprise. Everyone wondered eagerly what else this highly mysterious guy had hidden up his sleeve. Almost immediately, an elegant old man, carrying a beautifully carved wooden box, stepped forward as my second client. He carefully placed the heavy box directly in front of me. He told me he specifically wanted to test my abilities. He casually mentioned the bowl incident from earlier. He downplayed it heavily, saying exposing that cheap fake bowl wasn't actually that hard, but he insisted the scroll painting he had was a truly real challenge. He explained proudly that many big, famous auction houses heavily disagreed on its true value. Then he took the brush and confidently wrote the word painting. The old man looked incredibly serious and highly excited as he waited for my final evaluation. I looked at the word. "Are you really ready to hear the whole complete truth without any sugarcoating?" I asked him directly. The old man confidently said he only wanted the absolute truth. I stopped his hand from opening the wooden box. "There is absolutely no need to see the painting," I told him. I started my analysis by pointing out that the specific field symbol is located directly in the middle of the written word painting. I noted that the dark borders of this field were drawn very clearly and highly precisely. Then, I moved my finger to the outer lines surrounding the central field symbol. I pointed out a massive difference in ink tone between the inner and outer lines. I concluded that the brush pressure and the writer's momentum seemed totally disconnected. "The heart of the painting, the central part, is actually original," I told him. He smiled, but I wasn't done. "But the outer inscriptions and all the red seals on the edges are completely fake. The outer frame and the mounting paper aren't original to the painting at all." I revealed the dark truth. They were carefully cut from other, completely different paintings and flawlessly pasted around the original part. This tricky method is known in the dark antique world as reviving the soul in a borrowed body. The old man sighed heavily. He admitted sadly that he had spent a whole week constantly checking it without reaching a final decision. He added with deep regret that many highly paid experts had told him it was fully original, but he confessed he always felt the calligraphy style on the edge didn't quite match the painting style in the center. He realized right now his deep doubts were totally right and it was a stitched-together piece. He looked at me with fresh tears in his eyes, openly expressing his massive gratitude. He said if I hadn't boldly exposed the truth, he would have easily lost millions of dollars at auction. He reached into his jacket and handed me a thick red envelope full of cash as a reward, then bowed deeply to me right there in the street out of total respect and huge gratitude. This dramatic incident completely fired up the crowd. Everyone rushed forward aggressively to get their stuff evaluated. In the middle of the heavy, violent push, a poor-looking old man was shoved forcefully forward completely against his will. He tripped and fell to his knees directly in front of my stall, accidentally becoming my third client. People immediately began to mock him and aggressively told him to get out of the way. Some laughed loudly, telling him harshly not to block their path or completely ruin their business. I stood up. I stepped in quickly and loudly told everyone in the crowd to wait. Then I curiously asked the old man what exactly was in the heavy, dirty bag he was carrying. The man nervously answered, his voice shaking.
"It's nothing valuable."
He explained it was just a massive chunk of dirty iron he had found entirely by accident at a muddy construction site near the river. He added,
"It's heavy, and I was just going to sell it as scrap for food money today."
I calmly insisted on seeing the dirty piece. When the poor man slowly pulled out the incredibly muddy, rusty chunk, people in the crowd laughed loudly and jokingly told him to write a word for the fortune teller. The old man sadly admitted he completely couldn't read or write. He added shyly that the only word he actually knows how to write is iron. He explained he only learned it because he used to be a heavy porter at a massive old iron factory years ago. He grabbed the brush with shaking hands and slowly, clumsily wrote the single word iron on the paper. I looked at the word. My system instantly flashed. I reached into my pocket and totally shocked everyone by handing the thick red envelope of cash I had just earned directly to the poor old man. I told him loudly that I wouldn't take his money, but I would freely give it instead. I gave him the massive amount of money, saying softly, "Here's your medallion," as a highly symbolic reward. The old man looked down at the thick envelope in total shock, completely unable to believe what was actually happening. I started actively analyzing the word iron, the old man wrote. I explained that the right side of his messy writing heavily symbols total loss or disappearance. Then I pointed out that the left side traditionally means highly precious gold or precious metal. I interpreted the deep metaphorical meaning as the tragic loss of the object's original glowing golden shine. I concluded firmly that only after this dirty outer layer is completely gone, its true, incredible essence shows. I looked right at the trembling old man. I told him directly that what he's carrying isn't just cheap scrap metal at all. I revealed it's an incredibly ancient antique from the Tang dynasty, heavily used in the past to protect a very certain place. I identified it specifically. It is the exact foot of one of the massive iron bulls used anciently to prevent Yellow River floods. I leaned down and pointed directly to the faded engravings and lines still visible on the broken, muddy part. I pointed to the remaining ancient inscriptions on its rusty surface as absolute extra proof. I finally confirmed to the completely silent crowd that it was a truly priceless national treasure. The crowd erupted. They laughed out loud, completely convinced I had finally lost my mind. But I completely ignored them. I strongly advised the shocked old man never ever to sell it to a cheap scrapyard. I pointed down the street and guided him directly to a government museum office located exactly 200 meters away. I told him strictly to tell them he found it at an active archaeological site by the old riverbed. The old man asked with heavy tears streaming in his eyes if this crazy story was really true. I handed him more cash from my pocket to take a safe taxi. I reassured him warmly the state would definitely give him a massive official certificate of honor after handing it over. I added he'll also undoubtedly get a huge cash reward from the government. I insisted strongly that reward will be absolutely enough for his safe retirement. The man rushed off instantly, clutching his heavy treasure like his life depended on it.
Ding. You have successfully finished today's mission.
Well, the job was done. I started happily packing up my stall. Suddenly, a loud, highly urgent announcement blared heavily over the massive market speakers. It actively asked the old man carrying the black iron piece to go immediately to the Central Market Management Office. The heavy announcement repeated 3 times to fully emphasize exactly how highly important it was. The mocking crowd was completely stunned to hear the speakers confirm it was a highly valuable Grade A national antique. They slowly realized it was an absolute key clue in a major archaeological case. Later that evening, I was finally back at home. I checked my bank account. I found my total rewards had finally reached exactly $5 million. Yeah, this is it. The feeling of being fucking rich. You guys won't ever know it. After deeply remembering my hard, totally broke days, I smiled with immense relief. Then headed out of my apartment to grab dinner. But I was heavily surprised to find Commander Miller waiting right outside my door. Miller was standing casually in the quiet hallway. I asked in total surprise how exactly he managed to find my private address. The detective smiled slightly. He said I wasn't actively hiding on purpose, so finding me was incredibly easy. He added,
"Checking basic city rental records was no big deal."
He completely ignored my shock. He simply walked right past me and entered my apartment, casually carrying a plastic bag full of fresh apples. I looked up at Commander Miller. I asked him directly why he was making this sudden visit to my apartment. The detective sighed heavily. He sat down and told me that his little sister, Sarah Miller, had been acting extremely weird lately. He explained that he had taken her to the hospital for a full CT scan just yesterday. He added they did a brain MRI and full blood tests too.
But all the medical results showed absolutely nothing physically wrong with her,
he said in frustration. He noted grimly that she constantly claims someone is talking to her inside her apartment. I stopped him right there. I corrected him immediately, saying, "It is not just auditory hallucinations." The detective looked at me, surprised, then nodded and explained further.
"She says she always goes to the exact same place in her nightmares,"
he told me.
"She describes it as pitch black, and she says she always hears a strange scratching sound coming from directly behind a wall."
He frowned, trying to remember her words.
"She describes the sound like the quiet rustling of sand. But the absolute weirdest part?"
He leaned forward.
"When she wakes up in the morning, her real fingernails are completely full of white dust."
I suggested calmly that he should consider seeing a professional psychiatrist or a mental health expert for her, but the detective shook his head sadly. He said he already did, and she was currently checked into a secure psychiatric hospital. He added sadly that top doctors had officially diagnosed her with severe schizophrenia.
"They prescribed heavy meds, but they absolutely didn't work."
He mentioned that he visited her just yesterday.
"She grabbed my hand so hard it bruised."
He remembered.
"She terrifyingly told me that that person was about to finally come out."
He looked at me, admitting openly that he knows I have real special powers. He said he had personally witnessed the 2 previous impossible cases I had solved perfectly. He practically begged me to go to the hospital to see his sister. I hesitated. My internal system hadn't given me a task yet, and I was genuinely scared the reading simply wouldn't work without it. But seeing the desperation in his eyes, I changed my mind and fully agreed to go. The detective let out a massive breath, asking with deep relief if I was really okay with doing it. I clarified quickly that I couldn't guarantee I would actually see anything. I added I was just going to go to see if I could simply talk to her. The very next morning, I arrived at the large psychiatric hospital with a detective. As soon as we walked through the gates and entered the hospital garden, I got a new task notification from my system.
Ding. New mission.
The details of the new mission showed up clearly in my mind.
Location. A bench in the hospital garden. Reading style required. Dream interpretation and exposing subconscious truths. Goal. Take exactly 3 patients as clients. Accurate analysis required to pass.
I walked over to a quiet bench in the garden and sat down. I quickly put up a small cardboard sign, Dream Interpreter. Almost immediately, the first patient approached me. He was tightly holding a large black umbrella over his head, even though the morning sky was completely clear and sunny. He stopped in front of me and asked very seriously if I was the new mushroom in the garden. I calmly answered that I was not a mushroom. I pointed to my sign and explained that I interpret dreams. The patient nodded slowly. He said he had another very bad dream just last night, so I asked him for the details. He stared straight ahead.
I dreamed I turned into an umbrella,
he said. He added that the fabric of his umbrella body was completely torn.
Cold rain was leaking right through the tears. Those freezing drops were falling directly onto my real body. I feel like they were completely freezing and violently breaking all my bones.
He looked at me fearfully and asked if this terrible dream means his death is near. My system booted up. It actively analyzed the strange symbols.
Torn umbrella. Total loss of protection. Cold rain. A highly hostile, unforgiving environment.
I looked at the scared man and reassured him warmly that he absolutely wouldn't die and his body wasn't broken at all. I interpreted the freezing coldness for him. The cold represents the total absence of the specific person who used to carry and deeply protect you. I looked into his eyes. You are just waiting for that exact person to come back and fix your torn umbrella, aren't you? Then I confronted him gently with the harshest weight. But you know deep down that person is absolutely never coming back. The patient froze. He broke down crying violently at those words. He dropped the umbrella and whispered one single word full of pure, agonizing grief.
Mom.
The patient admitted through his heavy tears that he misses her terribly. He added with massive regret that he just wished he could have held the umbrella for her just once before she died. I comforted him gently, saying crying fully will finally make him feel much better. I reminded him softly that the umbrella was still right there in his hand, and he absolutely had the power to protect himself now. Several nurses rushed over to firmly calm the patient during his massive breakdown. He screamed loudly in grief as they actively tried to contain him and lead him away. As they left, the detective's sister, the girl I had specifically come for, slowly approached the bench. She looked at me and told me her brother said, I have highly special powers. She sat down next to me and asked anxiously if I could hear that terrible scratching sound too. When I asked her exactly what the sound was, she said it was the scratching on her bedroom wall that absolutely wouldn't leave her alone. Her hand suddenly shot out, scratching the wooden bench involuntarily. I saw her bloody, dusty nails.
Everyone thinks I am totally crazy,
she said, her voice shaking. She added that the hospital doctor said it was just auditory hallucinations, and her brother strongly thinks it is just severe stress.
But I am 100% sure what I hear is completely real,
she insisted. She pointed directly at my chest.
The source is inside the wall itself. Someone is scratching from the inside.
The detective quickly stepped in, trying to calm her down by saying the rented apartment right next to hers was totally empty. She screamed, completely hysterically, denying his words and insisting loudly that someone was definitely in there. She added, fearfully,
He counts non-stop. 1, 2, 3.
She grabbed her brother's arm.
He knows exactly when I sleep and exactly when I wake up. He follows me even in my dreams.
She started laughing completely hysterically, rocking back and forth, saying he scratches the wall without ever stopping. The scene continued with her fully breaking down, laughing and crying at the exact same time. Deep in my eyes, a faint blue glow sparked to life. I activated my system's deep analysis.
Sound analysis complete. Nails, actively, scratching solid concrete.
My vision changed. The system literally showed me a glowing blue blueprint of her bedroom wall. Right there in the middle, it revealed a hidden, secret cavity. I stood up quickly. I called the detective's name sharply to get his full attention. I pointed at him and told him flat out that his sister wasn't crazy at all. I confirmed the sound she hears is absolutely real, I told him. The detective asked in total shock if I meant someone was actually living in the empty next apartment. But I corrected him immediately. The source isn't from the next unit at all. I stepped closer to him. Someone is physically trapped inside the wall itself. I told him to go check her bedroom wall immediately. I specified clearly it was the exact wall directly between her place and the neighbors. There is a cavity, a secret hidden room inside, I revealed. I confirmed something is in that cavity right now, and it is most likely a person. I urged him strongly to move right now. No delays, I warned. The trapped person is still alive, and the scratching is still going on right now. The girl collapsed onto the bench. She cried heavy tears of pure relief that someone finally believed her. The detective didn't waste a single second. He pulled out his phone and made a highly urgent call, ordering heavy demolition gear to be sent directly to his house. He aggressively ordered his men to completely smash that specific bedroom wall down. He emphasized strongly that it absolutely must be done right now. Top speed. I sat back down and waited calmly, checking my watch. The minute hand moved slowly. I thought 10 minutes was absolutely enough for the heavy police gear to break the wall. While we waited, a new person approached my bench. He was the head of psychiatry at the entire hospital. The doctor looked at us and then at the exhausted girl on the bench. He saw my dream interpreter sign clearly visible next to me. He smiled a highly arrogant smile, saying the scene looked very interesting. He added casually that he wanted in on the fun. So the detective asked sharply exactly who he was. He proudly introduced himself as Dr. Lewis, the senior doctor directly in charge of Ward 6. He said he had just finished his morning rounds. He looked at me and told me directly that he absolutely didn't believe in this fake stuff.
But,
he noted casually,
I did have a highly weird dream recently.
He added that it was causing him some minor stress and anxiety. He started telling the dream.
I saw myself performing a routine surgery,
he said, noting casually this was just a normal part of his daily work. Then continued.
When I tried to use the surgical scalpel, I was highly surprised. The sharp metal blade suddenly became soft and completely dull. No matter exactly how much physical force I used, it would just bend and completely twist as soon as it physically touched the patient's skin.
He frowned.
I swapped it for another sharp one, but it was soft too. The patient was just lying there, watching me directly from the table without bleeding at all. No matter how incredibly hard I tried to cut him, there was absolutely no blood.
He described how he started sweating heavily from pure, intense anxiety in the dream. He had tried to logically analyze it himself. He firmly thinks it is just the huge, ongoing pressure at hospital work which led to some kind of basic job anxiety. But just for fun, he came here and asked me mockingly to interpret it for him. I didn't smile. I looked intensely directly at Dr. Lewis's hands. His hands were very tightly interlaced in front of him. It is absolutely not about work stress, I told him coldly. I explained slowly that deep down in his dark mind, he sees the scalpel as a physical barrier. The doctor asked, in highly defensive confusion, what exactly that meant. The scalpel is a wall strictly between you and the physical flesh and blood, I explained clearly. You are completely sick of touching life through a cold metal barrier. I leaned forward. Your dark subconscious is telling you to totally get rid of the tool. Your deep, twisted desire is to use your bare hands instead of surgical tools. I continued, my voice low and dangerous. You want to dig your bare fingers straight in to actually feel the heat and warmth. You want to feel the raw pulse, and then you want to completely crush and totally destroy it. The doctor laughed a very sarcastic, nervous laugh. He said I absolutely must be joking. He added loudly,
fortune telling is just completely made up stories for crazy people.
He heavily emphasized his highly professional identity as a senior doctor. He insisted loudly that his only role in life is strictly to save lives. I responded with a highly confident, cold smile. I asserted that the doctor knows deep down exactly what I said is the absolute truth. I confronted him directly with the physical truth. Look at your hands. I told him. Your hands are way too completely steady. This exact kind of cold, dead stiffness does not belong to a lifesaver. I paused. It is exactly like the hand of a cold executioner. I strongly advised him to take a very long break, or better yet, just completely turn himself in to the police. Pure, unadulterated terror and total shock washed completely over the doctor's pale face. He absolutely panicked. He turned and bolted physically from the scene as fast as he could. Meanwhile, the detective's phone buzzed violently. He got an urgent text about his apartment wall being fully torn down. He answered a highly urgent call. On the phone, his men quickly confirmed they had finally smashed completely through the concrete, and the result was insane. The detective whispered to himself in absolute awe, thinking my prediction was absolutely nothing short of a true miracle. His men confirmed it. He loudly yelled that he had just found a highly secret cavity directly behind his sister's bedroom wall. They quickly explained it was deeply hidden exactly in the structural construction gap entirely between the two apartment buildings.
Someone had secretly opened a hidden passage directly from the rented apartment next door straight into this empty space,
they reported. They added that the inside of the cavity was heavily lined with thick soundproofing material. The detective brother listened from the bench in absolute horror, slowly realizing the hidden gap was only half a meter wide. The detective also frantically asked over the phone about the specific person found inside. His men quickly reassured him they had fully caught the guy. He was a highly dangerous, violent fugitive criminal heavily wanted by the law. It turns out the twisted guy had been secretly hiding deep inside that exact wall for 6 long months. They quickly found the entire wall was completely full of tiny hidden peepholes used specifically for spying on her.
That scratching she heard non-stop?
The men reported grimly.
It was happening directly behind her head while she slept. The noise was literally from him physically covering the secret camera lens he'd planted deep in the wall every night.
The girl completely broke down in total shock after finally learning the absolutely terrifying truth.
Ding.
My system chimed.
Today's mission was complete.
Seeing things were finally settled, I decided my work was officially done and got ready to quietly leave the hospital. But before I could go, the detective's sister called out loudly to me. She pointed a shaking finger directly toward the hospital building where the doctor had just run. The detective followed her finger. He strongly wondered aloud if Dr. Lewis was deeply involved in something highly shady, too. I suggested coldly that he should actively investigate the doctor's past surgeries. Look specifically into the ones where the patients tragically didn't make it, I told him. You need to carefully check if the officially recorded medical cause of death actually matches the physical truth. I added one last tip. You should definitely look deeply into any missing person cases directly near this hospital, where absolutely no bodies were ever found. The detective looked at me with incredibly deep gratitude and thanked me heavily for all the help. That evening, I got a highly urgent text from the detective. The doctor was arrested. His secret basement was completely full of human specimens. I stared at my bright phone in absolute shock, reading the incredibly gruesome, detailed text. I took a deep breath and decided to head out for a nice dinner at a nearby hot pot spot to clear my head. While eating, I quickly realized my internet fame had absolutely exploded. I was officially the talk of the town absolutely everywhere I went. I clearly heard people at the next table whispering loudly about the highly twisted psychiatrist who just got caught. They completely credited the genius fortune teller for brilliantly exposing him. I checked my phone and found out the internet had officially dubbed me Arthur the Half-Immortal. I was highly surprised to see a massive forum post where someone was offering a crazy $2 million reward just for my home address. I mocked the silly idea, heavily thinking this kind of massive fame is absolutely nothing but pure trouble. Suddenly, a bright new system notification popped up on my eyes.
Ding. New mission.
The highly specific mission was set exactly at the busy public plaza directly under the highly famous Starlight Media Tower. The required time was strictly between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. This time, the reading style was totally different. Appearance assessment for internet celebrities. I literally had to rate 3 highly specific areas for them: beauty, luck, and career. The main goal was to exactly take 3 clients. I sighed heavily. I genuinely think this is absolutely the weirdest task yet. It completely feels exactly like deliberately throwing myself straight into a massive pit of fire. At 9 p.m., I arrived at the plaza to find myself completely surrounded by massive crowds of screaming fans and vain influencers. I sarcastically thought about exactly how I've been forcefully sent directly to a huge mob of highly fake people with 100 plastic surgeries, and my specific job is to literally judge their totally fake beauty and future. In the end, I quickly concluded the strange system is highly intentionally making people hate me. But I had to survive. I boldly moved forward with the highly risky mission to see the actual reality of these fake stars. I actively wondered what they really physically look like without absolutely all those heavy digital filters. So I set up my simple cardboard sign and sat exactly at my spot, directly among the influencers doing their loud live streams. My strange old-school setup quickly caught the highly critical eye of a very beautiful woman arriving with heavy bodyguards. She was an absolute top-tier internet celebrity with literally tens of millions of eager followers. She walked right up to me, surrounded by her cameras. She told me loudly she had heard my previous readings were incredibly accurate. She highly challenged me to rate her physical face right now, proudly showing it to me on her phone screen while broadcasting live to her millions of fans. As I looked at her, my eyes heavily glowed a deep, bright purple. My internal system immediately did a full, highly deep physical analysis of her exact facial features. I looked right into her camera lens. I answered incredibly coldly and completely bluntly, only 2 points. The lady was totally shocked and incredibly furious at the highly insulting rating in front of her massive live audience. She aggressively tried to keep it together, forcing a smile, asking if I had simply made a silly mistake. She loudly mocked the idea, saying the plaza lighting absolutely must be way too dim for me to see properly. She aggressively offered me another chance to heavily reevaluate her face. She told me sharply to look much closer and highly study her perfect face. I sarcastically replied that I only gave her an extra point strictly so she wouldn't get too highly arrogant, then pointed directly at her face. The exact tip of your nose is highly tilted and completely deformed underneath, I pointed out clearly. I totally revealed her secret. You have had heavy jaw-shaving surgery exactly 3 separate times. I loudly explained that her physical bones can absolutely no longer structurally support the heavy flesh on her face. I added loudly that internal cosmetic plastic threads are literally the absolutely only things physically holding her fake face up right now. Then I moved my gaze directly to her marriage palace area right between her eyes. I loudly explained to the livestream that way too many heavy, cheap filler injections directly there have physically pressed hard against a major facial nerve. I looked her dead in the eye and asked completely point blank, "Have you been having incredibly severe migraines lately?" Shock and panic flashed violently across her surgically enhanced face. But I didn't stop there. I dropped another massive bombshell directly to the live stream. I revealed to her millions of followers that her real biological age was exactly 42 years old. She absolutely lost her mind. She screamed at me at the top of her lungs, aggressively denying it and insisting desperately that she was only 18. She angrily claimed she had never had any surgery in her life, and her perfect beauty was all natural. She turned directly to her livestream audience, begging them to judge for themselves. She pointed at me and called me a total fraud and a cheap scammer. She screamed hysterically, asking exactly how she could possibly look 42. So I answered her very calmly. Biological age simply cannot be hidden, I told her. I looked closer. I can see clearly you have severe erosion in your upper cervical vertebrae, I added. You also have a heavily herniated disc completely destroying your lower back. I explained loudly that these specific, highly painful health issues only come from years and years of constantly sitting and wearing extremely high heels. Then noted scientifically that these physical conditions take at least 20 long years to actively develop. I concluded sarcastically, looking at her fake face. How can a lady in this terrible physical condition possibly claim to be 18? I leaned forward. How much longer do you actively plan to pretend you are still 18? How much longer will this massive deception go on? I mocked her coldly, saying her 3 kids sitting at home probably won't even physically recognize her soon because of all the constant heavy plastic changes. Her totally fake image shattered into a million pieces right there on the live stream. She dropped her phone, covered her face, and fled the crowded scene in an absolute panic. Left totally alone in the middle of the plaza, she instantly became everyone's laughingstock. More eager influencers quickly crowded around me, everyone desperately begging for a highly positive rating. Someone in the back shouted wildly that they would pay any amount of money for a good career prediction. Suddenly, a young guy pushed forward and excitedly asked for his points. He eagerly asked if he would finally hit the big time on the internet, but I just looked at him with pure, unfiltered disdain before moving on. Suddenly, a massive, heavily overweight guy aggressively stepped forward. He was a highly famous mukbang influencer. He loudly told his live followers that they weren't doing a normal eating challenge today. He added excitedly that they were trying a fortune reading instead. He challenged me aggressively on camera and loudly claimed that if he got a perfect 10 points, he'd happily chug a whole bottle of highly strong white wine in exactly one go. The man introduced himself as Blake, then boastfully asked me if his large features meant he would be incredibly rich and successful soon. He bragged endlessly about his rapidly growing follower count. His very last live stream even pulled in a massive $50,000 in live donations. He considered all this a highly solid sign of great good luck. He jokingly patted his massive hard belly, loudly quoting an old proverb about a big belly holding great greatness. My internal system quickly scanned his heavy body. It instantly found his internal digestive organs were in absolutely terrible, failing shape. I looked at him and whispered two highly shocking words: death money. The loud influencer was highly confused. He thought he misheard me and thought I said house money. He excitedly confirmed he was actually planning to buy a big new house very soon. I ignored his excitement. I seriously asked him exactly what he had for dinner tonight, but he laughed.
Not much,
he said proudly.
Just 10 pounds of highly spicy lobster and 5 pounds of heavy roast pork. Oh, plus 2 pounds of pickled crab topped off with a full bottle of strong wine.
He said if I was hungry, he would give me some extra pork knuckles he had stashed safely in his car. But I looked him dead in the eye and told him his rating was a negative number. The influencer laughed loudly, thinking I just had a weird sense of humor. He sarcastically asked exactly how a digital rating can even physically be negative. Yet I answered him with total, deadly gravity, because you are about to actively die. The big guy exploded in instant anger. He loudly accused me of cursing him and aggressively insisted he was totally healthy. He smashed his glass bottle on the ground, saying angrily his last medical checkup only showed a minor fatty liver. The man then heavily mocked me, saying absolutely everyone in the modern world has a fatty liver. He screamed loudly in my face, asking exactly how I dare to say he'll die on camera. I didn't flinch. I told him coldly that what's currently sitting in his massive stomach isn't food at all. It is rotting, highly decomposing toxic waste. I insisted firmly that absolutely all the donation money he made won't save his failing stomach now. The influencer screamed in pure rage. He challenged me violently, saying he'll drink the entire bottle of strong wine right now just to prove me completely wrong. He added loudly, he'll show me exactly how highly strong his stomach actually is. Looking at that, I warned him strictly not to drink a single drop. Call an ambulance for an emergency stomach pump immediately, I ordered him. You absolutely need emergency surgery right now to stop the severe internal bleeding. I told him if he does exactly what I say, he might live exactly 2 more years. I added a highly dark warning. If you dare to actually take one more sip of alcohol, it will absolutely be your final meal. The guy screamed, he'll boldly drink it anyway. He sarcastically asked the crowd exactly who I was trying to scare, then lifted the heavy bottle and started violently chugging the strong alcohol greedily. Less than moments later, he stopped. He dropped the bottle. Suddenly, the man started violently vomiting massive, heavy amounts of a dark brown liquid that looked exactly like totally rotten food mixed with dark blood. He fell hard to his knees, loudly begging for medical help, then collapsed onto the cold concrete, totally unconscious, as the entire massive crowd watched in pure shock. An ambulance arrived almost instantly to quickly rush him to the nearest hospital. The terrified onlookers stared directly at me with pure, unadulterated terror. Just then, a massive luxury car pulled up smoothly, officially announcing my third client. An highly elegant, wealthy businessman stepped out. It was Chairman Davis, the incredibly powerful head of Starlight Media himself. Surrounded completely by heavy bodyguards, the man approached my small stall. He immediately presented a massive check for $10 million and proudly identified himself as the owner of the massive tower building right behind us. He said he'd been closely watching from his office and clearly saw exactly what just happened with the influencer. He admitted openly, "I definitely have some real, rare skills." So, he offered the 10 million if I would happily come up to his private office right now. But he strictly wanted me to carefully check the entire feng shui of his massive company and to perfectly predict his luck and business path for the highly coming years. I ignored his massive offer completely. I just sat there, looking down at my phone. The man doubled the offer instantly to a massive 20 million, highly promising the check was absolutely mine if the readings were accurate. He promised loudly to officially make me the highly paid feng shui consultant for the entire company. He even gave me an open, blank annual salary that I could freely set myself. But I answered him incredibly calmly. I told him to tightly hold on to his check. I stated clearly and loudly that I absolutely didn't want to earn that kind of highly dirty money. The private tea he serves in his office is way too highly expensive, and that I simply cannot physically afford the dark cost. I calmly stood up and slowly started packing my things to leave. I warmly reminded him my strict working hours were completely over. I pointed directly to the massive digital clock on his own media tower, clearly showing 11 p.m. I told him I was sticking to my absolute rules. I absolutely always finish right on time. Even the highest king of heaven would absolutely have to wait if he showed up right now. Hearing my words, Chairman Davis got visibly angry at being so casually ignored. He angrily ordered his heavy guards to physically block my exit path. With a smug face, he sarcastically asked if the massive 20 million amount was way too small for me, then advised me as a highly young man to quickly learn exactly how to seize massive opportunities in life. He added strictly that as a human, I absolutely need to be flexible. But I answered him with a cold smile that I simply don't like dirty money. I added that absolutely all I physically care about right now is staying alive. Then I completely surprised him. "The specific area exactly between your eyebrows looks completely black," I told him. I told the powerful chairman that the highly complex feng shui arrangements deep in his massive building are absolutely already broken. Even with all the money in the entire world, it won't be physically able to fill that massive fatal gap. That's it. I successfully rage-baited the chairman. He yelled at me, angrily demanding to know exactly what I meant by that highly dark threat. I answered him incredibly calmly. I told him simply to come back exactly tomorrow morning if he wanted a real answer. I pushed past his totally confused guards and left the highly powerful man standing there in total confusion and blind rage. But right before I finally went, I loudly warned him one last time that his entire massive building's physical setup has absolutely already been breached. I returned safely home after a long, exhausting day. Checking my bright phone, I quickly saw the system mission status was still incomplete, with only 2 of 3 readings completed. The system screen clearly showed my high progress was fully saved, and I absolutely could finish the very last reading exactly at the same time tomorrow night. The very next morning, I woke up and looked out my window. I was completely shocked to find the angry chairman had heavily surrounded my entire apartment complex with massive luxury cars and armed men. The poor complex security guards stood there completely confused by the unprecedented, highly aggressive siege. Neighbors rapidly exchanged angry messages in their building group chat, heavily frustrated that they absolutely couldn't leave for work. Everyone was blocked from exiting the building by the wealthy businessman's heavy men. Down below, one of the heavy guards told his boss he had officially confirmed my exact location. He highly assured him the fortune teller absolutely lives in Building 5, apartment 502. And I absolutely haven't left the apartment at all since returning late last night. The chairman ordered his men to keep a very close, constant watch. He said confidently that he absolutely doesn't believe I will literally never come out. As soon as I show up, whether I'm just getting groceries or actively taking out the trash, they'll aggressively force me into one of the waiting luxury cars. But by high noon, I hadn't appeared at all. The chairman angrily ordered a heavy man to go straight to my apartment and knock on my door. His highly expensive patience was rapidly running extremely thin. Suddenly, a loud ambulance rapidly rushed to the scene, sirens blaring. Heavily equipped medics aggressively rushed out. They entered the building and quickly carried me down from the high building on a medical stretcher wearing an oxygen mask. The chairman pushed the medics aside. He screamed directly in my face on the stretcher, demanding a fortune reading right now. He loudly accused me of actively faking illness just to completely avoid him. He sarcastically screamed, asking if exactly 20 million absolutely isn't enough money for me and how much money I absolutely want. But I completely ignored him. The medics just loaded me into the ambulance and rapidly drove away. Inside the moving ambulance, a medic laughed and asked me exactly what I thought of his acting performance. I pulled the oxygen mask down. I smiled and answered that it was an incredibly good performance. I decided to give him a solid $2,000 tip as a reward. The medic, who was one of my friends, thanked me, absolutely overjoyed by the extra money. But Chairman Davis had somehow perfectly anticipated this highly clever trick. He was waiting at the exact same plaza spot that night. He sat arrogantly on a luxurious chair in the plaza, surrounded by his heavy guards. I finally arrived on foot, realizing there was absolutely no escaping this massive final confrontation. So I just walked right up, casually holding a cheap cup of coffee. I addressed the powerful chairman and loudly, sarcastically commented on the grand reception he'd prepared. There's absolutely no real need for all these highly fake theatrics. The chairman was already sick of me. He stood in the middle of his empty plaza, crossing his arms in anger. He cleared out the entire area today just for this meeting.
Why did you say the feng shui in my skyscraper is broken?
He demanded, looking straight at my face. He puffed out his chest and said he set this exclusive meeting up just to hear my advice.
Money is no object,
he promised.
As long as you fix this minor flaw, you can have whatever you want.
I didn't smile. Instead, my eyes glowed electric blue. I activated my system. A digital interface popped up in my vision. The system scanned the towering skyscraper and revealed the hidden truth. Deep in the building's foundations, several fatal physical failure points flashed bright red. I looked right at him. Chairman Davis, I said firmly, I don't read feng shui, and fake feng shui can't save you anyway. I pointed at his building. What I see right now are real, physical signs. Your skyscraper is on the verge of an imminent collapse. The chairman exploded in a rage. His face turned red as he yelled,
"You are spreading damaging rumors!"
He then bragged about his wealth, shouting that he hired the most famous architectural experts from Hong Kong to design this place. He started throwing around complex feng shui terms, claiming the building had a jade belt around the waist and the rare ability for gathering and storing pure energy. I let him finish his tantrum. Then I replied calmly, "Paid experts can arrange buildings," I told him, "but they cannot arrange people's dark hearts." I raised my hand and pointed at his forehead. "Look at your wealth palace, right there on your head!" I noted loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. It should be bright, but right now it looks reddish purple. I explained the grim truth to the onlookers. This dark color isn't a good sign. It is a physical mark of dark, stagnant blood. I deduced my findings out loud. You obtained a massive amount of unaccounted money illegally very recently, and this specific money carries the scent of fresh blood. Before he could argue, I shifted my gaze just under his eyes and revealed what I saw. There is a fresh horizontal red line cutting exactly below your eyes. I explained that in advanced building physiognomy, this specific spot matches the critical support column in the southwest corner of his building. I leaned forward, I stared right into his eyes and asked him point blank, "Has that massive support column already cracked?" The chairman froze. The anger drained from his face, leaving him pale. That crack was a guarded secret no one was supposed to know. Panic took over. He screamed right in my face, desperately calling my words total nonsense.
"The construction quality is flawless,"
he insisted.
"It passed every single rigorous inspection and check."
I let out a sarcastic laugh. "Which corrupt inspection are you talking about?" I turned away from him and boldly exposed the dark truth to the crowd. "During the foundation work, he wanted to speed up the project and save his dirty money, so they used substandard rebar." I pointed at the skyscraper, and the foundation depth is 5 meters less than legally required. I spun back to the pale chairman and confronted him. "To cover up this crime, you fired the honest building supervisor who bravely tried to blow the whistle," I shouted. "And then you secretly arranged a fatal accident to get rid of him." He stepped back, trembling. "That visible crack in your support column is no longer about whether you can see it or not," I warned him. "It has become a fatal matter of pure physics." I explained exactly what was happening beneath our feet. The building's weak foundations had started to sink. This caused an uneven, deadly distribution of weight onto the remaining columns. You only have 2 days left, I told him. It was the maximum time you have. If you don't reinforce this building, it will fall. I forcefully pointed my finger in his face. I told the wealthy man his skyscraper would collapse within 3 days. This won't be a minor fixable accident, I clarified. It will be a catastrophic structural failure. He opened his mouth to offer me more money, but I cut him off. I told the arrogant man this was no longer a negotiable business deal. Staring Chairman Davis down, I firmly rejected all his financial bribes right to his face. This collapse will cost thousands of innocent lives, I warned. I told him that any money he made from this cursed project wouldn't be clean. It would be the dark price of human souls. I guarantee it, I said loudly. Your final fate will be sitting in a cold prison cell, eating cheap inmate food forever. The chairman's illegal crimes were now exposed. I looked around and saw the gathering crowd holding up their phones. They were filming the entire event. The chairman's manager exploded in a panic. He wildly ordered his guards to stop all the live streams immediately. He screamed at the crowd, demanding they turn off their cameras and stop filming. But I ignored the chaos. I just checked my watch, announced that my strict working hours were over, and left. I quickly got into my parked car and drove away from the crowded plaza. Inside the quiet car, I thought to myself, I had finally succeeded in saving thousands of innocent lives today. With so many people recording my words, the police won't stay still. And that disgusting chairman couldn't ever block the recording from the media. After returning safely to my home late at night, the moment I walked through the door, I collapsed on my bed from pure exhaustion. Meanwhile, the internet went crazy. Social media blew up with viral news about me. My explosive video clips spread across the world. People read thousands of comments, wondering about my sudden disappearance and asking if something bad happened to me. But I was fine. I slept deep into the night. To be honest, I was sleeping so well, like a log. The very next morning, the consequences arrived. Starlight Media's inflated stock prices violently crashed. Financial trading screens worldwide showed a sharp, catastrophic drop. The stock value totally collapsed right after the manager scandal was revealed to the world. That day, I woke up far later than usual. As soon as I opened my eyes, a sharp, throbbing pain spiked through my skull. My head was pounding relentlessly, and my entire body felt heavier than it ever had before. It felt as if the sheer intensity of yesterday's confrontation with Chairman Davis had completely drained my very soul, leaving me physically and mentally hollowed out. I dragged myself out of bed, my legs trembling slightly, and stumbled into the living room. I collapsed heavily onto the sofa and blindly reached for the remote to turn on the TV. The screen flickered to life and I instantly froze. Every single news channel was broadcasting the exact same terrifying aerial footage. The luxurious towering Starlight Media Tower, the crown jewel of the city's commercial district, was completely gone. Where the magnificent skyscraper had stood just hours ago, there was now only a massive smoking crater filled with a chaotic mountain of crushed concrete, shattered glass, and violently twisted rebar. The news anchor on the screen looked visibly shaken, her voice trembling slightly as she reported the unbelievable details.
Because of a mysterious viral video that spread like wildfire late last night, a massive public panic ensued at the Starlight Plaza.
The anchor reported breathlessly.
In response to the overwhelming public pressure and the highly specific structural warnings made in the video, city officials ordered an immediate, emergency evacuation of the entire building and the surrounding plaza.
The camera panned over the apocalyptic wreckage.
Authorities have just confirmed that the building suffered a totally catastrophic foundation failure exactly at 3 a.m. this morning.
She continued.
If the building had been occupied during normal operating hours, or if the plaza had remained crowded, experts estimate that over 3,000 employees and visitors would have been instantly crushed.
She paused, taking a deep, emotional breath.
Miraculously, the official casualty count is 0.
I sat absolutely still on my couch, staring blankly at the bright screen. A deep, heavy silence washed over my living room. I realized in total awe that I had actually done it. I didn't just expose a corrupt billionaire, I literally saved thousands of innocent lives. But as the initial relief washed over me, a sudden realization hit. I quickly grabbed my phone from the coffee table. The digital clock on the screen read exactly 1:45 p.m. I stared at the air in front of me. Usually, my internal system would ping me with a new mission location and strict parameters right about now. I kept my eyes locked on the air, waiting for the familiar cold blue light to spark in my mind. I kept waiting. The clock turned to 2 p.m., but the room remained completely silent. I gripped my phone tighter. 2:30 p.m. passed, still absolutely nothing. A wave of cold, absolute panic violently hit my chest. My heart started racing. The daily missions were my absolute only lifeline. They were the only thing buying me extra days of life, slowly fighting back the terminal cancer cells ravaging my brain. Without the system and its life-extending rewards, my brain tumor would immediately resume its deadly aggressive course. I would be dead in a matter of months. My mind raced with terrifying thoughts. Did I go too far? By exposing Chairman Davis and saving thousands of people all at once, did I violently break a hidden system rule about drastically altering mass fate? Did the system abandon me for interfering too deeply with the natural order of life and death? I closed my eyes, breathing heavily, completely consumed by the sudden fear of my imminent death. But then, my vision was suddenly and completely blinded. It wasn't the usual clinical cold blue light that always accompanied the system. Instead, a brilliant, incredibly warm golden glow erupted deep within my mind, shining so brightly it felt like staring directly into the sun. A completely new notification window appeared in front of me. The interface was entirely different, radiating a pure, almost divine tone that resonated deeply within my very soul. The golden text slowly materialized, accompanied by a loud, majestic chime.
Critical override. Massive karmic influx detected. Fate of 3,412 innocent individuals successfully altered. Good karma threshold exceeded by 10,000%. Overload of the daily quota engine. Calculating ultimate compensation.
Before I could even begin to process the golden text glowing in my mind, a frantic, heavy pounding echoed through my apartment. Someone was hammering on my front door with aggressive urgency. I stumbled forward, my vision still swimming in a sea of gold, and unlocked the door. Commander Miller stood in the hallway and looked incredibly stressed.
The higher-ups are going absolutely crazy looking for you,
Miller said, his voice hushed but urgent.
The entire city leadership is turning inside out over the Starlight Media Tower collapse. Every intelligence branch wants to know how you predicted it. But I'm not here as a cop right now. I came here off the books as a friend.
He stopped talking abruptly, his eyes narrowing as he took a good look at me. The physical toll of the system processing the massive karmic influx was hitting me all at once. I was deathly pale, sweating profusely, and gripping the sides of my head as a blinding migraine pulsed through my skull. My legs wobbled, barely able to support my own weight.
You look terrible,
Miller said, his police instincts instantly shifting into pure concern. I tried to wave him off, muttering a weak excuse about just needing some sleep, but he absolutely refused to listen. He grabbed my arm, practically dragging me out of my apartment.
I don't care what you say,
the detective ordered firmly.
You are going to see a doctor right now.
Within minutes, I was shoved into the passenger seat of his car, speeding through the city streets. When we arrived at the massive central hospital, the emergency waiting room was completely packed. But Miller didn't even slow down. He pulled out his shiny police badge and bypassed the entire line, flashing it directly in the face of the triage nurses and hospital administrators.
This man is a crucial witness to a national security incident,
Miller barked with total, unyielding authority.
He needs an emergency MRI right this second. Move.
The hospital staff scrambled under the heavy weight of his badge. Before I could fully process what was happening, I was stripped of my clothes, put in a hospital gown, and shoved straight into the cold, sterile radiology wing. I was laid flat on a sliding bed and pushed deep into the tight, claustrophobic tube of the MRI machine. As the machine hummed to life around me, emitting loud, rhythmic clicking and banging sounds, I simply closed my eyes. The blinding golden light in my mind had faded into a soft, comforting warmth. Lying there in the dark, tight space, I felt an overwhelming sense of profound peace. I thought to myself that if my time was truly up, if the system had finally overloaded and my cancer was about to worsen today, then so be it. I had lived my last few months as an absolute legend. I thought about the desperate parents crying tears of joy when I guided the police to their kidnapped child. I remembered exposing the terrifying Dr. Lewis, stopping a serial killer hiding behind a surgeon's mask. And last night, I had successfully emptied an entire skyscraper, saving over 3,000 innocent souls from being crushed into dust. I smiled softly inside the loud machine. I had absolutely no regrets. An hour later, I was sitting on a cold examination table in a private consulting room, waiting with Commander Miller. The heavy wooden door opened and the lead oncology doctor walked in. He was carrying my thick medical file, but he looked completely pale, heavily confused, and entirely shaken. He didn't say a word at first. He just kept looking back and forth between two sets of medical films. One was my old brain scan from exactly 3 months ago, the one that had handed me my death sentence. The other was the scan taken just 5 minutes ago.
Doc, what is it?
Miller asked impatiently, leaning forward.
Is he okay?
The doctor slowly lowered the scans and dropped them heavily onto his desk. He took off his glasses, his hands shaking slightly.
I don't know how to explain this,
the doctor stammered, his voice filled with absolute medical disbelief. He looked directly at me.
The aggressive, terminal tumor in your frontal lobe, it's just gone.
I froze. Gone? I whispered.
It hasn't just shrunk,
the doctor explained, frantically gesturing to the new scans.
It has undergone complete, incredibly rapid cellular apoptosis. The cancer cells literally dismantled themselves. All that remains in your brain is a tiny, completely harmless speck of calcification. It's essentially a scar.
The doctor ran a hand through his hair, completely baffled by the impossible mystery.
By all medical science, this shouldn't happen. It's either the most profound initial misdiagnosis in the history of this hospital, or it's an absolute medical miracle. There is zero trace of active cancer anywhere in your body.
I slowly reached up and touched my own head. My hands began to tremble. Hot tears instantly welled up in my eyes, spilling over my cheeks as the crushing weight of my death sentence was finally, permanently lifted. Commander Miller let out a massive, booming laugh of pure relief. He stepped forward and clapped me heavily on the shoulder, absolutely thrilled by the impossible good news. I looked down at my hands, crying silently, completely overwhelmed with emotion. The system hadn't abandoned me. The golden notification wasn't a glitch, and it wasn't a sign of overload. When the system calculated my ultimate compensation for saving thousands of lives and shattering the karmic threshold, it didn't just give me an extension, it had given me my entire life back. That night, I was kept in a private, highly secure hospital room for standard medical observation. Through the thick glass of my window, I could see the city skyline lit up against the dark sky. Even from up here, I could hear the faint, endless wail of police sirens and emergency vehicles rushing through the streets. The entire city outside was absolutely buzzing with frantic news reports, massive investigations, and a desperate manhunt for the legendary fortune teller who had predicted the Starlight collapse. But inside my room, it was completely, blissfully dead quiet. I lay back on the crisp white pillows, staring at the ceiling, just enjoying the simple, incredible feeling of breathing without the shadow of death hanging over me. Suddenly, the room was bathed in that same brilliant, warm golden glow from earlier. The interface materialized directly in front of me one last time, floating beautifully in the air. When the system spoke directly into my mind, it no longer sounded like the cold, robotic, metallic program I had grown used to. The voice was now something incredibly ancient, vast, and cosmic, echoing with the weight of stars and time.
The journey has reached its end.
The ancient voice resonated.
I was never a simple, fortune-telling system. I am the karmic scale.
I listened in absolute awe as the cosmic entity revealed the ultimate truth. It explained that actively curing a fatal, biologically destined illness required an utterly impossible amount of positive karmic energy.
The daily missions were never just about reading fortunes.
The voice continued gently.
They were calculated stepping stones. They were designed to build your supernatural abilities and guide your path, so you could physically intervene in a destined mass casualty event. The collapse of the Starlight Tower was a fixed point in time. By shattering that fate, you generated the karmic surge required to rewrite your own.
The golden text shifted, displaying a final glorious status update.
Overarching mission, reset your life. Officially, 100% complete.
The ancient voice faded into a soft hum, and the interface expanded, presenting me with two final glowing options floating right above my bed.
The scales are balanced. Now, you must make your ultimate choice.
The system stated,
Option A, the path of the immortal. Keep the supernatural eyes. Become a permanent, earthly agent of fate. You will live with absolute, unlimited wealth and untouchable power. But in exchange, you will forever be forced to look at the dark, ugly rot, the impending deaths, and the deepest, hidden sins of every single human you meet. Option B, the path of the mortal. Relinquish all supernatural abilities. Keep the millions of dollars already deposited in your bank account. Live a completely normal, healthy, and natural lifespan as an ordinary man.
I stared at the glowing golden text, the heavy weight of the decision pressing down on my chest. I thought about the immense power of option A. With the heavenly eye, I could rule the world. But then, the memories of the last few weeks flashed violently through my mind. I remembered Lily, the little girl turned into a terrified robotic memorization machine by her cruel father. I remembered the totally fake influencers rotting from the inside out, the cheating husbands hiding secret debts, the treacherous old women preying on the elderly, and the murderous doctor, Lewis hiding behind a sterile mask. I realized with a heavy, exhausting sadness that having the heavenly eye wasn't a gift. It was an absolute curse. When you have the power to see everything, it completely strips away the simple beauty, trust, and mystery of life, because you are only ever shown the ugliest, darkest truths hiding beneath the surface. I was so tired of looking at the rot. I took a deep breath, looking at the golden letters. I didn't want to be a god. I just wanted to live. I choose option B, I whispered into the quiet room. Instantly, a rush of incredible searing heat left my eyes. It felt as if a heavy, invisible veil was being lifted from my mind. The faint, lingering pressure in my skull vanished completely, followed by a profound, incredibly peaceful silence in my head. The constant hum of the system, the analyzing algorithms, the blue data streams, all of it was just gone. The golden text shifted one last time, flashing a final, warm message before my eyes.
Host unbound. The scales are balanced. Have a good life, Arthur.
The golden light slowly dissolved into the air, fading like dust in the wind, until there was absolutely nothing left but the soft moonlight spilling through my hospital window. I closed my eyes, a genuine smile spreading across my face, and for the first time in months, I fell into a deep, completely normal sleep. Exactly 6 months passed. If you were to look at any social media platform, news site, or even the massive digital billboards downtown, you would see that the desperate search for Arthur the Half-Immortal had reached entirely mythical proportions. Following the miraculous evacuation and subsequent collapse of the Starlight Media Tower, I had become an absolute urban legend. Billionaires, powerful elites, and desperate politicians had placed multi-million-dollar bounties just for a single clue about my home address. But I had vanished completely into thin air, leaving the fortune-telling world as a massive, unsolved legend. The scene shifted far away from the chaotic boardrooms and flashing news screens. It was a beautiful, sunny, and breezy afternoon. I was sitting outside on the peaceful patio of a quaint little coffee shop. It was located just down the street from the Civil Affairs office, the exact same marriage registration building where I had done my very first reading 6 months ago. I leaned back in my chair, dressed in comfortable, stylish, completely normal clothes. My skin had color again, my body felt vibrant and strong, and I looked incredibly healthy. I took a slow, relaxing sip of my warm tea and just watched the people walk by on the busy sidewalk. For the very first time in what felt like a lifetime, I didn't see any swirling black auras. I didn't automatically scan their foreheads for wealth palaces, and I didn't see floating blue system stats hovering over their heads. I didn't know their deepest sins or their imminent tragedies. I just saw people. I watched a young couple laughing together, totally unaware of what tomorrow held. I saw an old man walking his dog, entirely focused on the present moment. It was so simple, so blissfully ordinary, and absolutely beautiful. Suddenly, my peaceful afternoon was interrupted. A desperate, heavily sweating businessman in a deeply wrinkled, expensive suit froze on the sidewalk. He stared at me, his eyes wide as he recognized my face from the blurry viral videos of the Starlight Plaza incident. He scrambled past the patio railing and rushed straight over to my table, gasping for air. Without a word of introduction, he reached into his jacket, pulled out a heavy platinum bank card, and slammed it down onto my small cafe table.
Please! You're Master Arthur, aren't you?
He begged, his voice cracking with pure desperation.
My global shipping company is completely failing. The banks are closing in. I will give you $50 million right now for just 1 minute of your insight. Just look at my face and tell me what to do.
I looked up at the frantic man. Deep in my eyes, absolutely nothing happened. There was no blue spark, no purple glow, no ancient voice whispering his secrets into my mind. When I looked at his face, all I saw was a tired, overworked guy who was carrying the heavy weight of the world on his shoulders. I smiled. It was a warm, completely peaceful smile. I reached out and gently pushed the platinum card back across the table, right to his trembling hand. Then, I reached down and picked up a small, dusty piece of cardboard that had been resting quietly against the leg of my chair, a relic from a past life. I flipped it over and placed it gently onto the center of the table. Instead of saying fortune teller, the bold black marker on the cardboard now read, closed indefinitely. The businessman stared at the sign, totally stunned, completely unable to comprehend why I was turning down a fortune. Keep your money, friend, I told him, my voice carrying a quiet, genuine human warmth. Go home, get some sleep, and take your family out to a nice dinner. He opened his mouth to protest, but I stopped him with a gentle nod. The future will figure itself out, I promised him. Leaving a generous cash tip on the table for my tea, I stood up and picked up my jacket. I stepped off the patio and walked away, blending seamlessly into the bustling, colorful crowd. For the first time in my life, I was finally just another face on the street, entirely free to live my own, beautifully unwritten future.